welcome to the Innovation Algebra meetup. We're trying to do it maybe every 2 weeks or so, depending on our stamina. Today's topic is AI is my co-founder, and I want to focus on case studies. Just to sort of give you an idea about Innovation Algebra and what it is. It's essentially a group for professionals that are working on or beyond the knowledge frontier. So the knowledge frontier, imagine this circle in which all of humanity's knowledge is in, and the circle just keeps on growing and growing. So the circumference is just getting bigger, right? It's getting longer. And the experts are sort of sitting on this frontier. They're trying to push it out. And what's really interesting now is that AI actually can help us expand the knowledge frontier. And we can even imagine working beyond the knowledge frontier. So coming up with new ideas, innovating. And so what's interesting is that we can actually build tools today to help you do this. I mean, it's, of course, a massive experiment. And a bunch of us have started building these tools and sharing it with a community of business professionals and seeing what could potentially happen. So that's the group. We also always have guest speakers. Today, I'm super excited. We have 2 guest speakers. Sanjay from India. He's a social entrepreneur. Interesting thing, he told me that something like 200,000 students have gone through programs that he's been working on. And what's happening now is that there's, of course, a push in education towards AI. And he has some amazing stories about how AI can change the life of somebody in rural India. And then I'm also very happy to have Nick Desai here. Nick, extremely experienced founder, also had an amazing exit. So maybe tell us how that feels. He's doing a new startup. And when I spoke to him, I was really interested in how much he's using AI. AI is his co-founder, truly. So, but he will talk you everything about it. So I'm going to speak for maybe, I hope 20 minutes or so. I'm going to try and make it extremely practical. And so extremely detailed. And then we'll have Adi speak, and then Nick, and then it's open discussion. So how it works at Innovation Algebra is that we keep on the meeting until people are tired. So sometimes the meetings are really long, but after this, you have a lot of opportunity to network, talk about your projects, and so on. So anyways, so, every entrepreneur has a configuration. This is where we are now. Imagine it as some sort of an atom, and you're in the middle of this atom. You're a proton or a neutron or something or other, and you have all these things floating around in the shells of this atom. Everyone, you have your LinkedIn connectors that help you out, your buddies, your advisors, your contractors, your community that you're working with. My 2 communities are the IA community and also the Hacker Dojo and Mountain View. And of course, you use tools. Now, what's new this year is that people are adding tools to the list of things in your electrons around you. Mine are GPT-4, Claude, Leonardo, and OpenRouter. Probably heard of most of them, maybe Leonardo not. Leonardo is a really amazing image generation tool. OpenRouter is a more techie tool for allowing me to access different models. But of course, there are lots of other tools. If you are interested in what some of the IA community thinks are good tools, the last meetup, the IA demo day, we had talk from CB Anand, which he gave a very nice overview of the tools that are sticky. These are the AI tools that you use every day. Of course, I use other AI tools too, but these are the ones that I really literally use every day. And it's sort of worthwhile sharing those. So if you have them in the discussion period, please mention them. So, of course, a more normal configuration is that you have a co-founder, right? Especially if you want to raise some funds. you're expected to have a co-founder. Now, there's forces that keep the co-founders together. I like to think of it in terms of something called atomic value swap. So this is sort of the most basic thing of value that's swapped between people. It's a fundamental thing on which pretty much all of business is based. So you are.
Just to confirm, are we on this first slide still?
Can you see my slide?
We're still on the first slide.
We see the whole deck, but not the individual slides moving.
Oh, okay. Let me see. Well, thank you for somebody sharing that. So let me see. Better? Yeah.
Yeah,
Let me quickly go.
Yeah.
Okay, so this was the first slide about professionals working on and beyond the knowledge frontier. This was the slide on the guest speakers with a little social, a little bias for each. This is my current configuration that I spoke about with all the entrepreneurs. Me in the center here being inside this atom. And this is where I started talking about the atomic value swap. So this is the foundational basis of a startup often. And it's, as you know, if you've been in a startup, this relationship is very tricky, right? If either side's to deliver, the whole venture collapses, just like inside an atom, right? These forces need to be strong. And if you've been around, you probably have a lot of stories about, okay, what went wrong in your startup with your co-founder. I definitely have a whole bunch of them. All sorts of really strange things happened. And it sort of makes you, if you've gone through this a few times, you're really careful how you pick your co-founder. So, and you should. Now, of course, the whole world is being reconfigured, right? Everyone is adding a huge amount of AI tools, right? Especially in the last few months, pretty much every day new AI tools are being introduced. We have people which essentially think of them as AI-based contractors. So you can actually, a contractor that uses AI to do stuff for you. We can imagine in the future maybe even complete artificial communities where you are, humans and AIs are working together and so on. But what I want to speak about today is just this closer the sort of inside the nucleus. What does it mean, this relationship, and if AI can become a co-founder and how far we are. So I'm on purpose not going to talk about AI tools, right? There's just a lot of them. It's just the tool that you're using. I'm interested in this relationship between human and AI co-founder, and where AI can help there. So now, typically, co-founders need to have complementary skills. Each offers what the other one lacks. Typically, you would say somebody with technical expertise and business expertise. They doing contributions that are not easily substituted, and often there's a swap of social capital. Somebody might be more connected and can help you. I think somebody is talking. Can you guys mute yourself, please? So, and of course, there's a big part emotional support and a shared vision and so on. And it's a sort of a complex blend of tangible and intangible factors to actually make this thing work, right? So it's a high hurdle for an AI to pass to actually be your co-founder. It's easier for it to just be a tool. So now there are things that naturally generative AI can do, and we'll go into some of them. The pros and cons. So I think one of the most interesting thing an AI can do for for you as a co-founder is what I call constraint solving. As a founder, you are very much constrained in what you can do, and you need to find a solution in these constraints. There are other obvious things, rapid ideation research, that's obvious. Framework application is maybe less obvious. When you go to business school, you learn all these different tools, business model canvas, there are tons of them. Pestle, 6 hats, whatever. Triz, you might not be using those frameworks today because some of them are just really hard to apply constantly. It takes a lot of work to use a framework, a thinking framework, but AIs can actually do this stuff. You can just say, hey, do a Triz analysis on my product, and we'd do it. That's really amazing. So it can save a huge amount of time. Planning, and of course, simulation. So where does it sort of miss the ball at the moment as a co-founder? We just have to be honest and say that generative AI, it does not really think like an innovator. Innovators think differently. We think in notions of pushing the knowledge frontier, the atomic value swaps, the fundamentals of business. We are essentially operating near the knowledge frontier, and we're trying to push it. And generative AI just doesn't behave like that. I call it behaves like a squirrel. A squirrel, very energetic animal, right? You tell it, go fetch a nut, it will run like crazy and do it, and maybe bring a lot of nuts to you. And this is how generative AI by default works. It just outputs a huge amounts of information. It's just very energetic, but a lot of it is you either know or it's not relevant, right? So it's sort of unfocused and sometimes just very pedantic. It acts like a teacher. It's very irritating if it tells you stuff you already know. I mean, you want to know what's new, what's different, and also maybe push back. If I go and ask an AI, please invent an underwater habitat for 100 people, it will just start doing it, right? It's great, okay, I know now how to build an underwater habitat, but if you're a real expert would say, hey, dude, are you serious? Do you really want to do this, right? There are lots of problems. These are things you need to do. If you talk to a venture capitalist in squirrel mode, right, you're out of the door, right? It's just not behaving like an expert. So, and of course, there are other things, no context, no real memory, September 2021 is probably going to live in everyone's minds for a long time. This is the cutoff date for the GPT-4 model, and things like sudden memory loss. If you use AI a lot, suddenly you just realize the thing just drops its IQ just massively, right? So now the question is really, can we know the good things, but can we fix some of the things that an innovator struggles with? And I'm going to actually start with just sort of out of the box GPT-4 in default mode. You're not adding anything special to it. And I'm going to use situational constraint solving in the context of an entrepreneur or a potential solo entrepreneur. So I'm starting with a prompt here, which says, it's a little bit of a constructed scenario here, but I just want to show you how constraint solving is amazing. So I'm a 20-year-old man. I just finished high school. I like playing video games and reading sci-fi. I'm not motivated. I live in Montana. Sorry, I don't want to diss Montana. I'm just going to say you're sort of out of connected of the normal innovation circles. You have $100. Create a step-by-step plan to turn me into a solo entrepreneur. So these are constraints. These are just extreme constraints. And it will start talking to you and saying, hey, your $100, these are things you need to do. These are, of course, just little snippets from a much longer conversation. You can find it on the Innovation Algebra webpage. Now I just continue adding more constraints. Hey, I'm just saying I'm average, right? I'm not a genius here. I don't know how to do this stuff. And it says, okay, your IQ score should not be a limiting factor. Now it tries to help you. Now you say, okay, all my friends are bad. Essentially, you're the average of the 5 people around you. Sometimes you just don't luck out in that way. So now it talks about how to improve your social circle. Or I'm not motivated. It tries to figure out what your root cause of this is. you can't write very well. It says, okay, that's fine. You know, a lot of projects you can work on don't require written skills. Now I'm going extreme. I'm in jail. Okay, incarcerated, it significantly alters what you can do, right? But it tries to help you. Say, hey, you know, these are the things you can do with skill development. Let's put it in further. I'm blind, right? You can basically add as many constraints as you want. And what happens is that it takes your context, where you are, and it tries to help you with that particular context. And that, I think that is really the most amazing capability for innovation and entrepreneurship, is to help you overcome your constraints. And this is what most of this talk is about. So solopreneurs, we operate in a world of constraints. We have major challenges and often huge adversity. So I've created three categories. It's actually three people: Samantha Smith, John Doe, and Jane Doe. They're all at different levels, if you want. So Samantha Smith is a seasoned entrepreneur, has an MIT background, working in EdTech. John Doe, self-taught programmer, has economic challenges, doing front-end development. Jane Doe lacks a formal degree, is doing entry-level jobs in retail and so on. So these are sort of the extremes that a solo entrepreneur might want to work in. I mean, what's interesting, because AI is there, somebody like Jane, who might not be a traditional entrepreneur, has the capability to actually innovate and do stuff. And that's really the amazing thing. It makes it the whole thing democratic. That means that innovation is basically going to be, and entrepreneurship can spread through the whole world just because AI exists today. Now, of course, talking to ChatGPT or Claude or something like this has no clue about your background, right? And this is a big problem. It doesn't have a context. So what you need to do is get your context. I call it your personal knowledge capsule. You need to build this and update it continuously and use this as a starting point in your conversations. So I have a template for these capsules on the website. Here is one for Samantha Smith. It has sections: personal background, a bachelor's in computer science from MIT, professional experience, software engineering, different roles, has led projects and so on, past entrepreneurial experience, has a particular skill set, strong technical skills, soft skills, certain value and vision, has certain preferences for a co-founder, has some ideas maybe in EdTech here. So, you know, this is more a typical person you would run into in Silicon Valley or the incubators in Hyderabad. But let's say here's somebody else, John Doe, age 22, self-taught in programming, digital arts, limited formal experience, has done some freelance graphics design, no entrepreneurial experience, basic skill sets, vision, is interested in tech solutions aimed at increasing accessibility for individuals with disability. Okay. Jane Doe, age 30, no college, entry-level roles in retail and customer service, no entrepreneurial experience, basic skill set, Microsoft Office, interest, reading nonfiction, cooking, community volunteering, some preference for a co-founder, current ventures, none, has some domain knowledge. Now, you notice here, if you are highly constrained, you're not a typical candidate for entrepreneurship, you probably need to make a much more detailed personal knowledge capsule. So I added sections here for life challenges, you know, multiple jobs, very common, time commitment, you know, you can only do this part-time, financial position, limited savings, cultural fit, so on. So you can see the templates on the website, but basically you have to start with giving the AI context, your new co-founder, your AI co-founder context where you are. Otherwise, it won't be able to help you solve these constraints. So what we're going to do next is we're going to take these personal knowledge capsules and run it through tools. And I'm going to show you the output for it. Okay, so many of you probably have never seen the Innovators Toolbox. So if you go to the Innovation Algebra homepage, you can see a huge list of tools that we've put together that you can use. Most of them are either case studies, videos, but a lot of them, the interesting ones, are ChatGPT prompts that you can just start. Now, we're going to use several of this in this case study. We're going to use something called IA 2.7. It's a prompt that basically started off a lot of this work. We're going to do something, Dr. Innovation, using brain simming. We're also going to use a very advanced prompt called Alpha Prompt 2, and we can do Entrepreneur Evaluator. Now, if you look through the webpage, you find lots of other things like teachers, storytellers, data analysts, fact checkers, economists, and so on that you could use. I'm not going to talk about those. There's a section here, AI is my co-founder case studies, which has all the conversations I had with AIs to put this presentation together. It's a lot of reading, but it's totally worth your while just doing this because you can get ideas, you know, how to be use AI as your co-founder. Okay, so let's go into some of this. Now, these conversations are extremely long and detailed, so I can only give you little extracts. Okay, so I'm going to try to do this. So we're going to take John Doe and do a virtual brainstorming with Dr. Innovation. Dr. Innovation is the moderator here. He's going to invite 7 experts, and we're going to work on John Doe. So when you start up the prompt, it says, what is objective and topic of today's meeting? You take your knowledge capsule, you just paste it in. No further instructions needed. Now, what happens is that Dr. Innovation puts together a team. We have a standard set of characters. There's the professor. He's sort of a naysayer, very clever guy, but he always, he always challenges you. He's actually been programmed to do that. It's a bit of an irritating character, but, it's really helpful in your personal development. And the prof immediately says, John, your idea sounds promising, but the tech landscape is saturated with similar applications. This is a professor. He just cuts to the point. It's sort of like being thrown into Shark Tank here, right? Dr. Prior Art is always looking for what other people are doing and will always comment on that. Visionary, always living more in the future. A humanitarian, looking at social impact. Engineering guru is focusing on how to build stuff. And then typically a few experts are automatically invited into this brainstorming session by Dr. Innovation. So I picked here accessibility advocate and investment insider. And there's an interesting character that also floats around called Murphy's Law. This prompt is sophisticated enough to run experiments, and you can set a percentage of what of these experiments would fail. So it's set at 95%. That basically means that adversity is sort of built into this prompt. You try something and it keeps on failing. It literally can run experiments and so on. It's very entertaining, actually. Now, if you go through the conversation, I just cut up a few things here. For example, investment insider says, hey, John, with your limited financial security, you'll need to be very careful how you pitch your idea to potential investors. They will want to see more than just the idea. Okay, if you don't have a background, if you already made a lot of money, it's not that easy, right? Dr. Prior Art says, listen, it's a legal maze. This has got to do with what John wants to work on. Dr. Innovation says, okay, make me need more work on your business approach. Now, you go through this whole conversation, they actually give sensible results. I mean, it's not extremely deep. We'll go into more deeper prompts in a minute. But at the end, you can ask for meeting minutes, and it will actually tell you everything you talked about and even create action items and so on. So this is already, I think, a great start for John to, to start exploring his ideas. So I'm going to use John Doe again for a different prompt. This is IA 2.7. This one is more focusing on deep analysis. So again, when you start it up, it just says, IA is ready to innovate and solve your problems. What are your goals? And you can put your knowledge capsule in. And what IA does, it behaves in a very different way from other prompts. It has a whole bunch of functions built in, and it pipelines these functions together and explains to you what it's going to do. Now, it's actually going to create 4 goals for John, and it's going to try and solve each 4 of those. First step is just planning, a plan step. So it creates this pipeline. You can sort of easily read what this means. It looks very much like code, but you get used to it. So it's first going to look at the topic front-end development and digital design. Then it's going to pipe it, if you're a Linux guy, this is pipe into the knowledge frontier. What is actually the knowledge frontier of front-end development? Then what are the research directions? What are people researching? What names just mean what famous companies and people are involved in this? And then it's going to take those ideas and expand it. Here's another pipeline. Topic is accessibility in designs. What are the trends in designs? Which startups in this? What are the research directions? And do idea cross-pollination between accessibility and disability support, right? Here's another one. Topic, startup funding. What would a venture capitalist say? What would advisors say? Use business model canvas. So you can see it's starting to chain together different techniques that you would typically use in business school together in interesting ways. It plans what it's going to do, and then it's actually going to start executing this. This little pipeline, this program will actually be executed in extreme detail, and it goes in a loop. It does this over and over and over again. Now, what is very common when you do these things is that you're overwhelmed and you run into decision fatigue, psychological phenomena where you don't know how to proceed. It has this ability to you can just tell it, just continue. I don't know what to ask or say or what to do next. And it's called guru mode. It just plans, it just continues going through planning and execution step, and you execute it via tapping in ++. That's it.
Thank you for continuing to hold. It's important to us. Please remain on the line, and your call will be answered by the next available customer account executive.
Hello. So we're in a telephone call here. Can you please mute Akishita? Oh, thank you. So what type of stuff does IA 2.7 create? It starts creating all sorts of ideas. For example, here, it comes up with, all by itself, a lot of startup ideas: accessibility checker, text to emote, virtual sign language interpreter. It's just really good at doing this type of stuff. And it will start evaluating these ideas for you. It will pick ways to score them. Alignment with John's values, technical feasibility, the market demand for it. Is it a low startup cost? John doesn't have a lot of money, right? Is it scalable, and so on? It will do rankings. So it says actually these 2 potential ideas, text to emote and hireable, as a high score. And then it will tell you what are the pros and cons of this. So IA 2.7 already takes you much deeper into the world, of a typical innovator. It's great to access all these tools that it sort of just magically can do. So, and if you get stuck, you just say ++, and there you go. So, when you, in the example, in the case study, you will see that actually IA generates a whole startup plan for John Doe with introduction, market research, product development, and so on. It's a little bit overwhelming. I mean, you get so much information out of it that often you don't know where to go next. So it will actually introduce next steps. These are the things you should do. So, so now I'm going to take Jane Doe and run it through a script called a prompt called alpha prompt. Again, when you start it up, it say alpha prompt is ready. What do you want to work on? It uses a strange word called CWSI, which just stands for continue with sensible ideas. This is sort of the ++ equivalent for alpha prompt. You just paste in your personal knowledge capsule. And this prompt behaves in a very odd way for ChatGPT. It is in a loop performing 14 different steps. And then it goes back to the beginning of the loop. The loop it took me a long time to design this loop. It's sort of a very scientific and meticulous way to work through ideas if you want to go extremely deep. Of course, since it's 14 steps that it goes through every time, it's a slow way to go things, but you sort of don't miss anything. So it sets the objective and the focus area. It evaluates that for objectiveness and accuracy. It does a situational analysis. It elicits questions and does a literature review. It learns through data collection. It formulates a hypothesis, typically 3 of them. It does some initial analysis. It ponders and prioritizes these hypotheses. It does some role play with experts. It tries to optimize understanding. It tries to adapt and modify itself. It then starts planning and proceeding. Then it tracks the plan, tweaks the plan. It reflects again. Navigate and nurture is just sharing ideas with others. And then it starts from the beginning again. So incredibly detailed way to analyze your situation. If you have the patience to go through it, it really can take you extremely deep into areas which you never even considered as an entrepreneur. Since this is an extremely long prompt, I just cut out some parts of it for Jane Doe. Little bits of it that might be interesting to her, to us in this conversation. For example, what does the optimized understanding step do? The type of questions that come up, the role playing that it does with experts and so on. And of course, if you get stuck, you just say CWSI and it goes through a loop again. So that's essentially alpha prompt. Samantha Smith, the more experienced entrepreneur, is sort of in a different situation, right? Samantha is probably thinking about how to get into an incubator or maybe even an accelerator, and doesn't really know if she's at the level and what would be missing. And so there's a prompt called Entrepreneur Evaluator. Again, Samantha just copies in her knowledge capsule into this thing, and then it starts evaluating her skills. It's also a very sophisticated prompt. When it starts, we'll give all sorts of summary of her skills. Now she can start asking questions. Would you be a candidate for accelerator, seed funding, venture funding, and so on? Gives an assessment of that. Also, you can ask, what does Sam need to work on? So Sam's more of a technical person, so you need to help work on business development, maybe on market validation and traction and so on. But also needs help, right? Can just ask, where should I get help? Y Combinator, Techstars, EdSearch. These just more interested in educational stuff. EdTech meetups, online courses, and so on. Is in California, so Berkeley Skydeck might be something. Also the MIT Alumni Network. You can see the prompts are starting to use the knowledge capsule of Samantha to actually help her, right? So, okay, so that's essentially the case studies. As I said, there's a lot of them. You really just have to read it. Please be patient and try it out. It's totally worth your while. I just want to talk a little bit about why innovation algebra works this particular way of doing things. And I call it, you're building a scaffold on which you're standing. So your basis is GPT-4. This stuff is so advanced, it only works on GPT-4, so don't even try it on other stuff. You typically load your own custom instructions, and then you load one of these prompts, for example, Dr. Innovation or Alpha Prompt or so on. These are what we call universal prompts or frameworks. They are very generic. They can be used for a lot of things. You can solve a lot of problems in it with these things, but they are not specific to your situation. So typically to, for example, apply them properly, for example, let's say, just taking an example, start with universal teacher or universal entrepreneur, you need to go a step called prompt specialization. You need to say, hey, I know you're a teacher, but I want to teach economics, or I want to teach international tax law or something. You need to specialize it. Then the prompt inside of itself, it has capabilities to actually enhance itself. So now you get a specialized archetype, if you want persona. It's more common way of talking about it. And then the scaffold, the next is you need to add your knowledge capsules. Now you can add knowledge capsules about yourself, but you can also add knowledge capsules about the area that you're working in to push it much faster to the knowledge frontier and even beyond. Because as you know, it takes a while for ChatGPT and these systems to sort of get to the level where you want to be. And then you put your objective in. So you build this whole stack of stuff before you start solving your problem. Most people don't have the patience to do it, but this is really where the real value comes in. Spend time building the knowledge capsules, picking the right prompts, stating your objective properly. And then you go into this loop where, you know, you are chatting with ChatGPT, you're using CWSI and plus and so on. This is a step where you're actually innovating. So that's essentially my talk. I just want to leave you with a thought. As you carve your path forward, remember the depth of your impact is measured by the footsteps you help imprint besides your own. This is the main reason why Innovation Algebra exists. We're trying to help people innovate, become more entrepreneurs all over the world. And the reason why these prompts are available to everyone is to help people all over the world. So it's a social venture, and as becoming part of the community, it would be great if you actually share your journey and your prompts and how you work. So anyway, that is my presentation. I will stop there, and we can go into questions. Let me just stop my share. Hey, Atal, how are you? I see you laughing
Yeah,
there.
good. Dude,
Yeah.
I just came biking to the Golden Gate Bridge
Yeah.
as Friday morning, and I'm usually biking. But I just invited some of my friends too, because I was like, you gave me so much of good knowledge a couple of days ago about what you're building. This is all really exciting. And I didn't know to the level of depth you can go with the prompting with LLMs, and kind of just learning about the depth of how much you have gone into the details into figuring out a very specific area and leveraging the power of LLM for that specific use case. So that's actually very exciting.
Just so you know, Atal, I met him recently. Atal is doing something really amazing. He's helping Indian immigrants with all their legal issues, trying to get a green card, right? So
yeah, so just to give some background, I'm building this company called Immigrant First. And as you can see, Immigrant First by name is about empowering immigrants. Especially because as an immigrant, I moved from India 6 years ago. I was like, why immigrants should be treated like third-class citizens? They should be treated as first-class citizens. We all want to create a lot of value for the world. And then I was like, how can we leverage LLMs for that? And started building this product out to use LLMs to help immigrants get green cards and O1 visa using LLMs, so we can help people write petitions and all. And a couple of my teammates are also here, Bhaskar and Utkarsh. So yeah, very exciting. Still building out the product, and I saw what Hans has done, especially how we can maybe build up like an immigration lawyer, which can answer very specific questions. But I think there is a lot of fine tuning and training required on it. But I loved how prompt engineering also gives a very good amount of kind of like results on that.
yeah, so just so you know, IA is a very much international community, and we do have a lot of people from India, from the incubators there, from Hyderabad and so on. incredible amount of innovation happening in India. It's absolutely amazing. So I'm happy to have all you guys. Let me know how I can help you. Maybe I'll take one more question and then we go to Adi and he can talk about all the stuff that he's working on. So, question for me? Cool. Okay. Well, we'll have lots of discussions afterwards. Adi, are you there? Are you ready? Hey, CB, see you joined us.
Hi. Yes, I am. Could you please enable screen sharing for me?
I think you should be able to share automatically now. So,
Yes.
so just I met Adi actually at a previous IA meetup on demo day and was really impressed with what he's doing. It's quite amazing. So,
All right. I hope you can see this.
yep, we can see it.
So just give me a sec. Yes. Hi. Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me. Always great to come to one of these IA conversations. Every one of them is more insightful and enlightening than the last. And I was just writing down so much about the knowledge capsule part that actually is going to help me build the next version of what I'm working on. So I'll keep this short. My name is Aditya. You can call me Adi. And I've been working in the development space for the last 10 years, majorly in the South Indian area. And I work in the areas of education, development policy, and politics. And majorly, my beneficiaries are from the rural communities who are first generation learners whose parents have never been to a school and who themselves have probably got access to the internet in the last 1.5, 2 years. So yeah, I work with the government of Telangana, which is a state here, and I'm also a leadership consultant for the Tibetan government, which is working in refuge in India. And yeah, I majorly work in the areas of improving education, making it more fun, more valuable for the kids who are involved, and just convincing them to stay in school, right? And so who we are is we're a social enterprise that's working towards bridging the achievement gap. In a lot of first world countries, it's measured as, the achievement, opportunity, access that exists between the predominantly rich community there. For example, in the US, it'll probably be with white communities measured against black communities and Hispanic communities. And measuring that gap and bridging it is where the government comes in. Unfortunately, we don't have such studies in India because of the size of the population, and that's where we've come in. We've been working on this for the last 10 years, trying to create a benchmark for what the rich kids usually have access to, compare that to the poor kids in India and trying to bridge that gap. So we majorly define it as the access or to opportunity, the skill level, the knowledge, and the learning outcome in an academic setting. And being able to bridge all of that will help us bridge the achievement gap amongst these kids in the future. What we do is we design large scale programs in partnership with all of these little departmental logos that you see. I don't think you'd recognize any one of them except for UNICEF in Canada. The Canadian government has been extremely helpful funding all our programs with the Tibetan government. You can majorly thank their scuffle with China for it. And UNICEF has funded a lot of our pilot projects with the government of Telangana. So, yep, we design opportunities that create opportunity, improve skills, and enhance learning in these communities so that they are able to compete globally and are relevant globally when it comes to skill set. So far, how we do it is we work with the government. We understand that, you can't really tweak and change government curriculum. So what we do is we take over institutions in summer, in winter, and practically whenever they get a holiday. For schools, we run something called the Young Leaders Camp, which is a summer and winter boot camp. For colleges, we have something called the Extraordinary Boot Camp, where we introduce them to brand new industries. For example, in the new age area, electric mobility, AI, coding, machine learning, etc. And additionally, we also want to create a lot of entrepreneurs from the rural community. So we have the Young Leaders Summit, which is focused on rural entrepreneurs across the country. And finally, for a lot of amazing folks like you who would love to come down to India and work in rural communities on research, policy, politics, education, we have the fellowship in rural development. So the Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Fellowship, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar wrote our constitution, and he was like the flag bearer for the marginalized community. So this is an ode or tribute to him. So far, we've had about 225,000 students take part in our programs over the last 10 years. We've had 3,500 plus educators from across 24 countries who've come down and worked and helped us create best case practices in education and introduce their practices from in their country to India. And my teams personally visited 15,000 villages, right? So we've been trying to collect as much data as possible about the community, about the kids. And we've been trying to use different perspectives of how this data can be collected based on how our educators have also experienced it in their university. So a lot of our projects are also funded by academia from different universities who would like to come down and learn a little more about Indian markets. And we use those opportunities to kind of collect data to improve our experiences for them. So our design philosophy is simple. We have something called the Happy Learning Framework, which focuses majorly around the students' sense of well-being in the class, a sense of belonging in the class, and a sense of collective achievement. Because most of these kids, as I said, are first-generation learners and don't really want to continue education because they've seen their parents work, and most of their parents are farmers or agriculture laborers, so they get paid daily wages, right? And converting skill into daily wage was it's a convincing argument for them to leave and get started there, because probably in a month they're able to buy a phone, in 3 months they're able to buy a bike. So dropping out actually was a more lucrative option for these kids because of the quality of education that they felt was not appropriate. So most of our curriculum focused on making the kids self-sufficient, which is why we believe that autodidactic learners will rule the world someday if they're able to build capacity to learn on their own, put them in any situation, and they'll be able to kill it. Most of our design focuses on being learner-centered. It's data-driven, which means we collect a lot of data about the child, their preferences, what they like in class, what they hate in class, their favorite subjects, their favorite teachers, why they have these favorite teachers and all of that. And based on that, we design our curriculum. And what we do is to experiment these frameworks. We go where nobody goes, right? For example, barely anybody works with the Tibetan community, and most of our beneficiaries are schools that are placed in absolute remote locations that don't even have roads. You'll have to probably trek a few kilometers to get there. And these are government schools that are made for these kids to come join, so that they're not left out in the open. So this is our design philosophy. We've built something called the Happy Learning Framework, and we've been trying to perfect it over the last 10 years using different educators from across the globe. So here's some bragging. We've consistently been the top 10 startups, social sector startups in India for the last 7-8 years until the pandemic happened. So this is where everything changed for us, right? It was back to day one, and pretty much every school in India was shut. Government schools were shut for 2 years. So we really lost touch with the kids. We lost touch with their communities, and we had no idea what they were up to. So when they came back, we realized that these students, although they had an extremely low attention span, they were struggling to focus for long periods, which would in some cases more than 15 seconds would be a challenge. They had zero patience for dull lessons because they had access to reels and YouTube shorts, which gave them content like this, and they didn't want to sit in a class where the teacher is yapping about or just lecturing them. They've loved learning online, so the teacher immediately felt inferior in their classroom. And since they were so addicted to digital and TV learning, working in groups or their interpersonal skills were extremely low when they came back, right? And they were consistently sad in the class because they were craving for lessons that were fun, that were entertaining. and something that is tailor-made for them, right? If I understand English and Hindi, or probably English and another language, I would love to learn if there is a mix of both those languages. So internet gave them that, and that's not something that the teachers were up for to work on. Finally, the kids changed entirely because suddenly they've started listening to K-pop, and they started watching K-drama, and they wanted to know all about vampires and if they're real or not. And this was extremely surprising for us because these kids never wanted or never had the access to international content. And what was the most important observation for us is when they came back to school, they were 3 to 4 grade levels behind in English, math, and science. Now, this was an incredible challenge that you cannot expect a teacher to solve. So we also went and figured out, how did the pandemic influence the teachers, right? So they were struggling to adapt to these new ways of teaching because the kids had no attention span whatsoever. Although they had fewer resources, now it was like making do with them was very, very challenging. They also did not have a peer counseling network or a network of other teachers who could help them grow, right? And keeping up with the ever-changing internet zone content was extremely difficult for them, right? So working to bridge these gaps with very few resources and kids who just don't want to sit and listen to you is one of the worst experiences a teacher could have. And this was happening to them in every single class, right? And each teacher has their own facilitation style, their own style of speaking or designing chapters, and that is something that they did not have. They didn't have resources or access to that. And apart from all of this, they had this pressure of completing their syllabus on time, so their workload just kept increasing. The teachers were now put in a situation where life sucked to be a teacher when you return from the pandemic. So that's where we stepped in. We were back to day one, and we're like, okay, we have the happy learning framework, and how do we solve this problem at a larger scale again? So we started integrating AI. When I say AI, I've heard a lot of you speak. There's nothing exceptional or advanced that we're doing. We've just integrated a few tools that were free to use initially, and we tried to make a tailor-made, joyful educational journey for each child in the classroom. And that's where we figured that until now, we realized that extraordinary achievement required extraordinary people, but then that was not true, or not completely true. You actually need extraordinary tools for extraordinary achievement, because that's the current day and age. That's where we introduced ChatGPT and Midjourney in our classrooms, and oh boy, life just changed. So it amped up student engagement because now we were able to create custom learning journeys for every single classroom based on the skill set of the teacher and the vibe of the class. And we introduced ChatGPT to the students as well, so that accelerated their learning and their skill mastery to a level that we were unable to do for the last 10 years. And as we put them in teams and gave each kid access to more and more tools, it just increased their achievement collectively because they got so creative with their prompts. It started off with asking simple questions like, hi, will you marry me? I love you. And then it just went on and on and on. And then the curiosity actually helped them get more out of ChatGPT. So over the last 3 months that we've piloted it, for the kids, actually, it's become a personalized, non-judgmental, extremely patient tutor. And for the teacher, we figured that it's become a co-pilot and a coach of sorts, and also like a research assistant that gives you all the data that you need from the internet. So you don't have to spend hours researching content, right? So this is where we stepped in. We figured that the next phase of our programs need to be transformational, it needs to be data driven, and needs to be project based. That's the only thing that the kids enjoy in a classroom. And here are some examples of how that went. So this is the Tibetan community, students of class 12, typically teaching them entrepreneurship or teaching them what business model canvas is and all of that would have taken a long time. But they spent 3 days with ChatGPT, and they came up with a model where they were able to go speak to the customers, speak to the students, create a needs assessment plan, and figured out that, hey, I think we could start a cafe in the school, a profitable cafe. So they figured out how to interview customers. They figured out how to put that a part of their pitch. They figured out what the solution was. They went and interviewed every single person in the community, and the ownership for the tasks increased because they used to come running back to their computer and enter all the information that they found back on ChatGPT. And I'd say, hey, great job, guys. This is what you should do next. So the interaction that they started having was probably not something that any teacher could have provided them at that point, because the teacher would want to go back and like figure stuff out and come back to them. But this made that feedback loop extremely quick. So this is why you can see happy faces. And these guys just got funded 25,000 rupees to start a cafe in their school. So this is one example. Additionally, we have kids who wanted to get into agriculture. So they've now started an organic garden in their school, and they take care of each plant, right? So they actually, instead of Googling, now they use ChatGPT to tell me a little more about the lettuce seed. How do you take care of it? What season, what nutrition? And I want to grow completely organic. So the kid argues with ChatGPT to tell them how to save and grow the plant and give them the right nutrition. And now we have a huge organic garden in these schools. And these models are going to be scaled across all the schools, right? So we have an organic kitchen garden that's going to be coming in all schools. We have an entrepreneurship club that's going to be expanding in all the schools. So I'll take you through some more examples and tell you what's changed in our approach to the curriculum as well. And this is Pasan, an extremely passionate foodie who figured that, hey, my area grows a lot of chili and people love eating spicy food here. So he used ChatGPT to create a recipe, and he's created Pasan's chili. He sold 450 boxes of chili in his own school and the schools next to his. And he's making a ton of money already. He's in class, he's in grade 9. And this is a slightly more advanced team. They're in their first year of graduation. And they just started a QR code based company, and it basically tracks the students' attendance using QR codes. And these guys are going to be partnering with the government, and they'll be signing an MOU for 250 schools next week. I just had the opportunity to meet them in Delhi, and they've done it entirely using ChatGPT. And this, one of my favorite companies, is Alo. Though students realized that in their community, there's a lot of aloe vera growing and they didn't know what to do with it, because even the farmers got extremely less money for selling it. So they figured that, you can make aloe vera products, right? So they used ChatGPT, figured out a bunch of recipes, created an entire marketing plan, used Mid-Journey to create images and packaging and all of that. And now even this company is going to be funded. They're going to get 25,000 rupees as well to kickstart this product as a student to entrepreneurship project. Additionally, kids also learn foreign language, and they don't use Google Translate anymore. They're using ChatGPT to make it more conversational and learn the language as a baby would, in a more conversational capacity, with words and small phrases. I think they've created their own Duolingo, and this is what's happening in schools every weekend. And yeah, teachers, they the kind of feedback I'm getting from teachers is incredible, because for more than the students, I feel like the teachers have finally found someone who they can work with, like a co-pilot. So when he said AI is my co-founder, I think AI is my co-teacher is a perfect adaptation for the teachers here, because they're able to create activities, they're able to create lesson plans, they're able to customize them, all of it in the same hour. Something that would take months or weeks earlier is matter of minutes as of now using ChatGPT. And they're able to execute and facilitate larger groups, because ChatGPT actually creates de-skilled, customized, minute by minute action plans for them, which makes it extremely easy. Now, all of these experiments have actually come down to one initiative where we're using student-led clubs to expand our reach to all of these schools, right? We cannot depend on educators visiting these schools so that they can change, but we're using student leaders within the community, teaching them how to use the computer, teaching them how to use ChatGPT, and then they're teaching their friends how to use it. Using all of this, we've been able to create clubs across each school and each institution. So what you see on the left, art, music, dance, digital literacy, science, photography, journalism, astronomy, and English is for schools. And what you see on the right, coding, communication skills, placement prep, entrepreneurship, innovation, that's for colleges. And additionally, students who've just gotten internships with some companies, it's their first job. So they're using ChatGPT to kind of make their workflow super smooth and becoming one of the best interns possible for that company because of how much they're able to churn out, especially these interns in digital marketing and social media. So, yep, to conclude it, what we're going to do next is these experiments were brilliant. And next up, we're going to be creating engineered prompts like we saw. For teachers, we're also going to be using the universal educator tool to further experiment. We want to create individual learning paths for each and every student. We want to do some skill forecasting so that we can address these skill gaps in advance. We want to use AI to help the kids also prepare for exams, so it doesn't become like an extracurricular tool. Would love for AI to create a guided career path for each one of them. Because as of now, the inspirational, aspirational element over here was using like Myers-Briggs career tests and stuff, which is unaccessible for rural kids. So having such tools has actually revolutionized the way we're working in education in the rural space, particularly. And the next step that we're doing is going to be training about 3,000 plus teachers to use these free AI tools. So learning can become more fun and valuable, both for the teacher and for the kids. And finally, how AI has influenced us as an organization is firstly cultural sensitivity, because I'll tell you what, a lot of the content on the internet is made with the focus of Western kids and European kids. So when a teacher is looking for content online, she doesn't really find things that are customized to their context. So using Midjourney, it became so visual that you can just type in imagine student billionaires from rural Telangana or rural Tibet, and it'll give you images that where kids can see themselves, right? So the whole goal of having local role models is kind of sorted here. We are able to instantaneously customize lessons for any region. Our content generation is super quick. We're able to expand in any region because ChatGPT speaks in any language. Right now, it's also doing Tibetan, which we were super surprised. We are able to do research and development at a much quicker level. Our operational costs are reduced. We don't really need researchers and educators doing work for us, coming back in 24 hours, changing and all of that. We have a real-time 24/7 feedback loop. So now that we've used this, we're also creating a chat GPT kind of a chatbot for the kids to kind of safely interact with AI. And finally, we're able to scale and streamline our processes like we've not been able to do for the last 9 years. So I feel like having all these AI tools kind of like even after 10 years, it's still able to keep us relevant. It's still able to keep us on our foot on the edge and be at the forefront of technology, I'd say. And finally, this is what we want to do. We want to bridge the achievement gap that exists between the poor communities and their affluent peers, one school at a time. Yep, that's about it from my end. And if you guys have any questions, I'm open.
Hey, Adi, thank you so much. I think you just blew everyone's mind now. So I guess one of the questions I would have is, how do people in Silicon Valley or, in the Western world, how can we help you with doing this stuff? Can you imagine that these systems that you're pioneering would spread everywhere, where innovation just happens everywhere? It's a planet-wise phenomena.
Yeah. So the absolute step one is currently access to technology and internet itself. So about just 40% of our schools are currently connected to the internet, and the rest of them the teachers use their phones and have a hotspot with like an old laptop and they run stuff on it. So the next step is we're convincing the government to invest in setting up computer labs, even if it's like a Raspberry Pi and a monitor. Set these up at least 1 or 2 in each school, and we understand that like scaling at such a fast rate is also a little ambitious and might lead in quality gaps. So what we're doing is we are empowering students, right? Currently, our students are all being trained to be digitally literate. So the resources we're currently looking at is number one, having more kids, giving more kids access to this tech so that we can all be connected. So that's actually the first, foremost basic goal. Secondly, is we also want to streamline our data collection process and our data analysis process. So having like a prompt that could help a teacher, for example, put up saying, hey, this is the composition of my class, and based on the data collected, this is the performance data. I want to teach them how about pyramids today, and can you help me create a lesson based on the happy learning framework that I can execute today? So that would be step 3, where we skill ourselves better in terms of creating these prompts. So yeah, these are immediately these are things that I can think about. But on a longer term, it'd be awesome if we had more people come down and like tell us about their education system, things that they enjoyed most in college and school, and their valuable experiences, and experiment some of that here, so that we can learn and scale those as well.
Questions from our members?
Hey, Hannes, Desai here.
Hey, Sai, how are you?
Hey, Adi, we had met your T-Hub CEO, right? MSR.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I was also suggesting to Hannes is sign some kind of an MOU, get our IT minister, the great KTR, also, and do that kind of to get visibility. This is all for. See, your presentation in this group has been awesome. Your work that you've been doing is awesome. We need to bring it up at a higher scale, the visibility, right? There are a lot of people who are willing to come and help you in your effort. So we will do some kind of those kind of stuff. So MSR today said he's going to Chicago. The last time I met him, he said he's going to come back and talk to us about these things. So we want to talk about you and your impact on in this group, and how T-Hub itself, with the government of Telangana, take it up to the next notch, next level. Of course,
Awesome.
In which way you are thinking to package this thing? When you show all these clubs and things like that, it's a tremendous quantity of information and packaging. Then really to scale up this is fantastic. I agree. Visibility is important, and how you are going to start to present it, or how to be to enable more people to use it. Do you have anything already in mind?
Yeah. So essentially, how we're going about this is so our entire state is divided into districts, right? The smaller blocks, and there are towns that are closer to the city which have internet access. So our first step is experimenting with each one school, for a boys' school and a girls' school, in each of these districts, and creating clubs and teacher clubs and student clubs with them. And as we grow out of that, what we also do is we invite students from across the district to come to this one school every summer. So we have about 5,000 to 8,000 students who are trained at these summer camps, specifically in Telangana. And they go back and start clubs in their respective schools. So it's an iterative process where it's a 3-year plan, where the schools that are close to the towns become year 1. And in their year 2, they're expected to have 10 more schools under them who they'll be giving all resources that they've learned. And then it's like a cascading process. So by year 3, we'll have students of class grade 8, 9, and 10, who are the club leaders, who will take this forward and teach their juniors who are grade 4, 5, 6. So it's a completely student-led student leadership project, and it's a 3-year program. Luckily, we've had the government of Telangana be extremely generous with us, work with us for the last 10 years. So at least this one state, with respect to how progressive it's been, I think we could scale in the next 2 years itself.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic, and really one of the trainings here is how to train the people how to promote this thing, because that is going to be when you start doing that in a scale, and one leader start to teach another leader, and the education is going to change completely from a centralized point of view to everybody can create value and generate that. Fantastic. Congratulations. It's amazing.
I agree.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jorge, for saying that. It's truly amazing. I would suggest that we switch over to Nick at this point because the meeting is getting long. After Nick's conversation with Nick, the meetup will continue until people are tired. So there will be lots of time to talk about your projects, ask questions, and so on. A lot of this is just pure community building. So, hey, Nick, thank you so much for coming. I'm sorry to line you up just after Adi, so sort of a hard act to follow, but you know, tell us more about what you're up to and you know, your perspectives. So
yeah, well, so first of all, thank you everybody, and thank you Hannes for having me, and both of you. I found myself, it's rare that I'm a speaker at an event where I am listening to the other speakers copiously taking notes, right? Which I was, Hannes, when you were talking about some of the tools, and Adi, as a Indian immigrant here in the US, the work you are doing with students there and the businesses they're starting, it just warms my heart. And we're connected by email, and if there's any way that you can, any way that I can be helpful, I'm here in the US, but you know, would love to see, would love to be helpful because it's transformative work. So I will go relatively quickly, in part because I didn't realize exactly how long these things go. And I have a call for raising funds for my company in 10 minutes, which I've pushed back a little bit. So I will go fairly quickly. So hello, everyone. I'm Nick Desai. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Together by Renee. We're an AI-based digital health assistant that helps older people in America, people in their 50s, 60s, and 70s, manage routine healthcare tasks. And for those of you that are in the US, you will know that healthcare is extremely difficult. And it's often not difficult because you have to pay for it, because most people over 65 are covered by Medicare, not because the pills or medications don't work, because most chronic disease are actually very effectively managed by widely available medications, statins and metformins and things like that are available worldwide that are very effective. But because just getting a doctor's appointment, filling out a patient intake form, going to the pharmacy to get a refill for your medications, all of these things are really hard, and especially hard if you don't drive, or if you're older, or if you can't hear that well, or any of those things. And we help mitigate those barriers using an AI-based tool called Together. Now, the reason that I am on this panel, though, is not because of what we've built in our app, but how we use AI in our own company, right? So our app is built on LLMs and voice and text and visual AI, and does some really interesting things with that. And you know, Hannes started this talk by saying people have had crazy co-founder stories. This is my 5th venture-funded startup, and I have had some crazy co-founder stories. The craziest of which was the guy that was my co-founder who used a company credit card to sleep with prostitutes, and we had to fire him, and also he got prosecuted and all that. So yeah, that was crazy. But with AI as a co-founder, I want to talk about some of the practical ways that we use it here at Together, right? And I don't have slides, so I'm going to talk a bit, but then actually make a demo and show you literally AI in action, right? So the most important thing that when we think about how to use AI as a co-founder is it can replace the both mundane functions that nobody wants to do for themselves, right? Or are time consuming, expensive functions that you would otherwise do, you otherwise pay somebody to do, and things you don't know how to do, but that are critically important to do. So what is an example of each of those? So for mundane functions, it's just finding knowledge, doing market research, getting data, right? It's an extreme, yes, you can do a Google search and get a bunch of links and whatever, but if you go into Bard and you ask a question, or you go into GPT and you ask a question, yeah, you can't trust that 100% of the data is perfectly accurate, but you will get enough of a data point, and especially if you know how to use the right prompts, you'll get enough data that you can really start thinking about, okay, now let me dig into that data. Now let me dig in further and really get the kind of data that you need to start building out a financial model. You can then ask GPT, what variables should I consider in my financial model, right? An example of something that is expensive is almost everyone who raises money, they deal with, well, do I want a safe note or do I want a convertible note? Even that, well, what's the difference between those two things? Or here's the text of a safe note. You can find those on the internet, right? Here's the text of a safe note. Here are my terms. I want to raise $1.3 million. I want it to be a rolling close for 60 days. I want a 10% discount, conversion into this round. Can you edit the safe note accordingly? Most people are like, oh, I should get a lawyer to do that. But in that closed-end scenario, the commercially available AI tool, Gen AI tools will do an extremely good job. I know we've raised $8 million that way, right? Using documents that were edited or created by GPT, right? And an example of tasks that are important and that I could do, right? And I'm the kind of founder who can do, not everyone can, is the one I'm going to show you. And that is about, let's go into ChatGPT right here, okay? And let's go into AI. So this is an example. I've already pasted this in here, right? Of data that we have put in to this thing that I have found. And this is some of our engagement data from our app, okay? Now, here's what I'm going to ask it. Can you write a 5-sentence intro in venture capital terminology to persuade a prospective A-round investor to take a meeting with me? Emphasizing the early engagement data and market potential. Okay, let's see what happens. Okay, introducing a pioneering AI health assistant spirit by poised to, with an illustrious track record, blah, blah, blah. The initial app is 86% user engagement figure. You can all read this, right? Impressive traction that improves this. Now, this may not, okay, so now I might want to say the total market size is 43 billion per year, and our TAM is 8% of that market in the first 3 years at a 65% gross margin. Can you work that into the intro? Okay, so there you go. Now, can you make this much shorter? Let's say you need it shorter for a very quick intro. There you go. Okay, so I might send this to somebody, right? I don't necessarily. And can you use the data above and our engagement data to write a user-friendly email to our audience that to our members that inspires them to invite their loved ones to use together? So this is a completely different thing, but based on the same data set and the same information I've given together, right?
So Nick, I'm curious, how much capsules have you loaded in this type of thing? It's just the stuff in the beginning there, or do you actually writing huge amounts of text and just pasting it in all the time?
No, so the point of this, the point that I'm trying to make is that this has been a running conversation, and each of these are running conversations that I'm having with GPT. And because it remembers the context of what's in this chat, it's getting smarter and smarter. So each time I get data, or I get feedback from a VC, or I learn something new about the market, or a user shares something, or we get a news story, I just keep putting it in here. And then optimizing my writing, or my email, or my press release, or my whatever, right? In fact, it said how to invite your loved ones. It has learned this. Log into the Together app, navigate the invite section, because it helped me write an FAQ now going back 2 months ago, right? So the point is, this becomes a living, breathing dialogue, just as I would have with a marketing professional in my company. In the same way, our website, our consumer emails, my investor deck, the safe notes that come out of my investor deck, right, when I get interested investors, right, are all created in these same kinds of tools, right, and used in this same way. And it saves me a tremendous amount of time, it saves me a tremendous amount of money, and it continues to get smarter and smarter about the products and services I'm building. Now, obviously, when Hans talked, he talked about how to use this to actually generate ideas, and even looking at code and generating code. My view at the moment, the way I use it is, how do I research something? How do I explore something? And how do I build an increasingly intelligent dialogue, right? Imagine that you had a co-founder that had all the information on the internet available, okay, had immense amounts of market data available, understood your personality, context, syntax, and the terminology of your prospective customers, right? And of your prospective investors and of your end users perfectly well, right? So now let's take another example. I need a B2B intro email to an ACO to be a customer of Together. Can you write a short email in healthcare terminology that gets them to take a meeting? There we go. There you go. Now, this is a little long, and I would ask to shorten it and whatever the point is, but all of this comes out of here and say, yes, I have to edit it a little bit, I have to look at it, but in the course of a day, whether it's in a Word application, a B2B email, a D2C email, a marketing email, creating an ad, and then obviously this is just one tool, but we use other visual AI tools to create the ad copy. I fed a video into a video editing tool. We had a 3-minute news story about our app. I fed it in, turned it into a 15-second TikTok ad, and for an audience of people in their 30s, and I'm in my 50s, so I really, I'm not a real TikToker, and run the ad on TikTok now, right? All of these things are happening. I'm not paying a marketing professional, not paying a legal professional, I'm not paying a data analyst, I'm not paying any of those people. And in my last company, I was paying all of those people, at least as contractors, to do very, very similar work, right?
Sorry, Nick, can I interrupt you very quickly?
Yes.
How do TikToks from this?
Not from this, there are other tools. I can't remember which one we use. I'll look it up and send it to. Sorry?
Use Synthesia?
Synthesia is one, and there's another one that does generative AI video where it edits to the essence of a video if you upload an editable video file. And I haven't used it in a few weeks, and I can't remember the URL, but it'll come to me, right?
Sure. I was, well, I'm just thinking about something like this, so I'm just wondering what you're using. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So we're, all of these things are things that we can do, and this makes my life dramatically easier, and I feel that much more productive in the course of a day, right? And there are other tools, and I will go over stop share and then share in my other browser.
Can I interrupt over here? So
Yes.
I just wanted to know. So you told me that you are creating a 30-year-old avatar for a TikTok ad. Is it true?
No, we're not creating an avatar. We're just editing a news video with an avatar that this software already has. We did to talk about this news story to get people as an ad for our product.
Okay, so AI is basically making like a person speak like that.
Yes, yes. And editing the video as well. And I'll show you another tool that, for example, we're now using, I'm playing with, it's called Air, right? And it's right now it's in beta and it's relatively low cost. And there are other tools. There's also Bland, which is a competitor to Air that's much, much cheaper. It's not as quite as far along, but this allows me to create a very intelligent, robust, human sounding call agent for both inbound and outbound calls. So how do we use this in our app product? Well, we give people reminders to take medications. If they don't respond to our reminders for 3 days, they get a phone call. That if a human had to make that call, well, that's very expensive, right? But the AI makes a call and it calls them and says, hey, Jonah, you haven't taken your meds. Is it, are you feeling okay? Are you out of meds? And it has a very conversational conversation. And 28% of the people who answer the phone actually engage with that avatar, right? That's an incredibly high number when you consider the context of how many people hang up on robocalls, right? So again, in the interest of time, I'm going to stop for the moment and open up to questions. I will first say that I'm available for questions on email or LinkedIn. LinkedIn, I'm just Nick Desai. Here, I'll put it in the chat just so that if you want to get a hold of me, because I'm sort of rushing here and I don't mean to be, but if you want to get a hold of me, chat, I am here or there, okay? And I'll open up for a few questions now.
Sure. So can I have a question? So like one thing that I found out when doing some other projects was actual deployment, because like AI obviously can help you with a lot of these stuff, but like, for example, deploying some, I know, like actually sending stuff or filling in some applications for something where you have a explicit format for that, or I know, well, so I don't know other word than deployment. I know, like this, all of this stuff that you kind of have to click, or I know, call, or whatever you have to do. Do you have any AI solution for that? Because I remember when I was applying for college, very long time ago, and it was tremendous amount of clicking. Yes. So this deployment, not just writing application, but just filling in stuff, you know, and all of these other things that you have to, in a sense, put into work.
So what Jan is talking about is a very important problem, which is filling out forms, right? I just filled out a extremely long form myself just yesterday for an award application related to the big giant Consumer Electronics Show. And the GPT and Bard helped me extremely in writing the answers, but I had to copy and paste and click and do all that. So what if it could just go through it for you? So I don't know of a great tool that does that right now, right? We are, as it happens in our company, for the specific application of filling out patient intake forms for healthcare. So for those of you in other countries, you will find this laughably stupid, right? But American healthcare, to see a doctor, you have to fill out a form called a patient intake form. And it is literally a form that they print or expect you to print and fill out by hand, and then they type it in 2023. That may seem insane, but that's the way it is, okay? So we are actually building a tool in our app that would allow that PDF form to be auto-populated and emailed to your doctor instead of having to type all that information in. But I'm not aware of a good tool right now that will automatically click, fill, go through a process. There is another tool that is being developed that will buy stuff for you, as in hey, go to Amazon and buy the shampoo I usually buy, and it'll go and do all the clicks for you, right? I don't know how particularly helpful that is. I know stuff like that is being built, but I don't think there's an individually great tool right now.
So maybe that's an idea for us to get together, everybody, and do such a model. But in any case, I'm also asking about because, you know, when you, for example, want to have like this business accounts at the Meta, etc., or get an API key and all of this, you have to click it. And I was just wondering whether anybody knows like a solution to do this. I know that maybe the examples I'm giving are not great, but you have to forgive me. Here
Yeah,
it's like
so
8 p.m.
With that though, you're gonna ask for forgive me, everyone. I do have to drop. I have to be on this call at 10:45, and I gotta change conference rooms for that. Gotta raise money, you know how it is. But thank you, Hannes and Adi for having me on. I would love to, you know, participate in the future and share more information. You all have my contact information, so please feel free to reach out if you need more. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Nick, and go kill it.
Okay, bye-bye.
Cool. So we still have quite a big group, 24 participants. Now is the open chat session that's starting, and it just continues until we get tired. So I actually wanted to call out someone. Hey, Evan, how are you? Good to see you here. So
Look, you can hear the dog and how excited he is to join.
Evan and I go back a long time. Evan is a lot of intellectual property and also did work at Watson at IBM. So that's a while back, right? So
yeah, it's already 12 years ago that Watson won at Jeopardy. And I talk to AI people these days, and they say, Watson? What's Watson? Just to show you how fast it goes and how ancient that was. Hannes, I need to drop, but I will reach out to you. We have to catch up. And I fortunately saw the announcement on LinkedIn, and I have just been really impressed with the whole presentation. Look, I was supposed to leave 40 minutes ago, and I've stayed on. So my kudos to you and the community that you have established here.
Thanks, Evan. I really appreciate it. And let's catch up.
Yeah, I will reach out. I'll send you an email.
Cool. So I'm just going to pick some random people here just to get a conversation going. Chris Goshong, you want to say hello? Okay, somebody else. Vidal.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, how are you? Sorry, my camera's turned right. I'm just very impressed by what you're doing here. I feel very lucky. I forget where I found out about your meetup, but this is very, very interesting what you've done. And I'm a solo entrepreneur right now, and so I totally resonate with you, like how I can use AI as my co-founder. I'm using it for a bunch of stuff, helping me code. It's so interesting, some of the things people talked about. Like, I'm actually helping a friend of mine with intake forms. He has a healthcare company. So the last speaker was talking about how he's using intake forms because that's a real problem. I'm impressed by the people you have on here too that you seem to know. Like, this is anyway. I'm just kind of babbling on, but I'm very impressed by what you're
Yeah,
trying
so
to do.
one of the advantages of being an old timer in Silicon Valley is that you have a network, right? And the best thing you can do is share that network with other people, so that's what we're trying to do, expanding our networks, giving everyone the opportunity to actually contribute. It's hard for a solo entrepreneur to get an audience, right? You want to talk about stuff, who are you going to talk to? Often you don't have a big network, or you're not a social media guru. So this is the opportunity that I want to give everyone. So actually, I'm just going to open it up. If somebody wants to, push their own agenda, now is the time to do that. Just tell us what you're doing. So, Anyone can jump in. Otherwise, I'll just pick somebody, a random victim again. So thanks, Vidal. So anyone want to talk about what they're doing and why they're here?
Well, I am in the same way that everybody surprised about all these things. Congratulations. The level of the conversations is amazing. And right now I am, as a solopreneur, learning how to share knowledge among people that travel to Silicon Valley to learn about innovation. And this is one of the things that is quite interesting. For one side is people from all around the world. That is one of the fantastic things that are happening now with all these video conferencing, but also there is a very close network of people that is doing things. And I am here in Mountain View in the Hacker Dojo, that is a location where we have a lot of discussions and conversations how to create things. And yesterday we use all these, all the things that you are showing us. Thank you for the demo that you gave me yesterday and the call for action in how to use in practical ways. And we run yesterday a workshop that is how you can take a measurement the distance from the idea into success. And using ChatGPT and all these tools and all these prompts is amazing how many different points of view you can generate in a snap of time. Then usually it may be taken for days or weeks or years to have all that information to keep a good conversation. Right now, if everybody is looking how we can measure or how we can build a dashboard in every person, then you have a lot of ideas, how far these ideas to be reachable to success or getting into generating value. That's something that, as a curiosity, was an interest today, is one of my points of view that I try to develop.
Hey, thank you, Jorge. It's always cool talking to you. Hey, Ivan, I think you want to say something, and we might even communicate it via email, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's right. I sent you an email. Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for a very nice event, very enlightening and inspiring at the same time. Yeah, I can share what we are building. So my idea, and me as the father of 3 kids, usually have timing where my hands are busy, but at the same time, it doesn't stop me from thinking about the things and about the ideas, about the design decisions, market opportunities and stuff. And usually what you have in that situation, you can have like send a voice message, or you can arrange that something should work in the background. And so what we are actually creating is the tool to enable AI work for you in real time. For instance, on collecting data, analyzing data, for instance, in your market environment, in your vertical, in your competitive environment, in your technology environment. And just to send the insights for you, either like on daily basis or in real time. And we just started. So this is like the block of the functions that works like situational awareness. So where you are at, and so what is surrounding you. If you don't mind, I can like share a screen.
Sure, go ahead.
Very briefly.
So,
Yeah, so this is like the web application, which is no code. Here specifically, we're collecting information from Twitter, and then filter out non-AI news, and sorting, breaking, like someone changes API or someone just launched something new, and this goes directly to my Telegram messenger through the bot, and the daily digest goes to some public channels, and as well as the on Reddit. So we here daily publish out 100% autonomously AI news from Twitter. And this is like just a basic use case, which works as a demo for us. So that's briefly what we are building. And it's built in a way that I ask myself, so what if we're able to create an organization where like a lot of functions may be deployed very easily, and you just build multiple assistants for you to have a superpowers. So
Thanks.
another.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, another use case is a little bit different. I said the voice message, and this is just sorts either this like new feature idea, or this like new blog post idea, or it is just a diary record. And I built the same for my wife, and she was like sending like something unstructured ideas, and then I said, okay, convert it in the like market list, and then I get refined information, for instance, to some random errands. So this is how the AI works for me. I just extend my communication bandwidth with that.
Thanks, Ivan, for sharing that. Appreciate it for the mini demo. Somebody else want to talk about what they're up to?
I'm going to get off. Thank you so much for having me here. As always, super intellectual, profound conversations. So inspired. Looking forward to more.
Thanks, Adi. Really appreciate you coming and sharing your journey. Hope to have you again, and let us know how we can help. So, yeah.
Yep, I'll see you at the next one.
See you next one.
Bye.
I can talk about something if you wish.
Sure,
It's more of a general question rather than something that I'm working on. But the question is, because you say about expanding the knowledge and this kind of things, and one thing I'm wondering currently, and all of you guys work on AI heavily, so it's like an open-ended question, whether we are at the beginning of the revolution in AI or whether we are at the end of this revolution. Well, obviously on the practical bit, all of these ideas that are here are new, and all of this will only come to us. So in 10 years, definitely more and more of this will be approached. But from a more of a theoretical standpoint, I'm just wondering whether it's possible to make AI actually, in a sense, reason, or maybe we need a different approach, and actually creating something really new. Because, for example, if I would train my AI on medieval music, I cannot assume that it will make Mozart symphonies out of it, because AI is now basically, my view on AI is that this is a compressed knowledge of the data that it's learned on. So, for example, I think about ChatGPT as a response from an average what an average informed person on the internet will say on the topic.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I totally get what you're asking, and I might have just a very different opinion on that. So basically, as you say, ChatGPT is average, right? It's the average person, but it's also an alien. It's this new thing that we're talking to, and we're treating it like it's a human, right? That you're talking to. If you stop treating GPT as a human and talking to it as an alien, you will realize that it can do stuff that humans cannot even imagine doing. And so I've been experimenting a lot with exotic functions, exotic archetypes and personas that are artificial entities that I create inside ChatGPT that do not behave like humans at all and have capabilities that humans don't have. And when you look at the prompts that are, of course, created by ChatGPT itself, humans cannot even understand the prompts. It's just at this different level. And once you start getting into experimenting with exotics, and I don't know how many people there are, I would love to speak to other people that are working literally beyond the knowledge frontier. We're trying to figure out, can you create new ways of thinking? The crazy thing is that it works. You can do this, and it's actually very easy. Once I teach you how to construct an artificial entity, you can do some really crazy stuff with it. And the conversations I'm having in the last month are just totally blowing me away. It's like, wow. It's like, it is truly an alien that we're learning how to speak with, and it can do all sorts of stuff that we cannot even imagine yet. And this is without any fine-tuning or training or something or other. It just has this intrinsic capability to do stuff that humans can't do at a scale that a human won't be able to do. I don't know, it's really hard to explain because it's so exotic and new, but it is possible. And this is sort of where the new frontier is, creating personas that are, or archetypes that are not like humans. They behave differently.
Hello.
Hey, Sean.
Hey. I've been listening for quite a while, and I think I have an interesting perspective. If you don't mind, if I give a couple minutes story here.
Sure, go ahead. That's why we're here.
Yeah. So, I joined the technical recruiting industry a couple of years ago as an independent consultant, not really with much knowledge or anything. And I did that for a couple of years. And I recently left the staffing firm I was at, partly because the market slowed down and partly because I was very interested with AI and I wanted to move on and do other things. And what I've been able to do with, ChatGPT over the past few days is actually productize everything I've learned as a technical recruiter, working hands-on with engineers and co-founders. Basically everything from the, how to interview from the candidate's perspective and from the employer's perspective, negotiate offers. Really, I approach like the hiring process like a researcher. And so I'll obviously, be creating marketing content and sharing my knowledge. But something interesting I've done is actually I'm using this database that I've now created of information from my head to build these bots. One would be a reverse recruiting solution for job seekers, where I have a set of custom instructions and prompts, like a prompt sequence, like the one you created, like that 15-step process for job seekers to basically use ChatGPT to identify open positions, like, submit their profiles, find hiring managers. And then the same thing on the like a startup CEO. I'm designing a set of custom instructions and a prompt workflow that they can go out and find their ideal talent as well. So I just think it's really interesting that somebody like me who never had the ability to build anything or interact with technology at scale now has the ability to, create things and, influence people with technology. I just thought that kind of aligned with what you were saying, so I wanted to share my experience.
Yeah, it's what can I say? I'm a new person. I can't recognize myself from 6 months ago. It's just a different thing. It's like when I discovered coding, I became a new person. Now I discovered this new thing that I can talk to and I can do crazy stuff. And I think what's interesting, a lot of people that are spending time with AI are discovering a new self, right? It's like, wow, it's just weird, right? So
yeah. Hey, Sean, I'd love to talk with you later because I'm doing something very similar to that. So
yeah.
I'm working like an AI coach to help like job seekers. Like I was a hiring manager and I've written some books on it. So I'd love to connect with you on what you're doing.
Absolutely. I'm going to drop my LinkedIn in the chat. Maybe you can send me a connection request if you don't mind.
I'll send you one right away.
Awesome.
Anyone else want to talk, or should I pick?
So my perspectives come from theoretical physics, where I did my PhD, and basically what happened in the field for the last 40 years is that in fundamental physics people have different ideas, but it seems like none of it is the idea in a sense. So people seem to be not smart enough to figure it out. So for example, you might have heard about string theory was one of this fundamental idea, but well, some people claim it's out there, but well, it's not as successful as it was marketed to be. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I talked a lot with Roger Penrose about this ideas, and he thinks that in a sense, like the reasoning, so that our understanding of mathematics, for example, physics, is entirely different than it is via computational methods. And I'm just wondering how to think about this, because for example, he gives an example that if you calculate a limit of a certain mathematical entity, then what will computer do? Well, obviously you have symbolic algebra as well, but what will computer do? It will plug in larger and larger numbers, and then it says, oh, it's getting closer and closer to that value, then it's that value. While we, in a sense, can, when I'm talking about like infinities, so for example, we want to calculate we have a mathematical function, and we want to say what is the behavior of that mathematical function at infinity. And in a sense, when you do it computationally, then you have to plug, 10,000, 100,000, million, blah 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 blah, and then you find some value at the infinity. While in a sense, we as humans, we can in a sense take that limit. We understand what it means to bring it to infinity. Obviously, this is a very trivial example, and we have.
It's totally relevant. For example, it's related to the halting problem, right? So computers just have a tough time, but humans can sort of reason about it. And so so this is actually a really interesting thing. So normally mathematically a function needs to be implementable, but humans can sort of look at it and sort of have intuition about it and say, okay, I don't really know how to implement this function, but this is what I expect. I have a theory about it. The interesting bit is you can create unimplementable functions inside ChatGPT. Now, what is an unimplementable function? For example, I'm just going to give you one sample. So there's a person called Bowden who has a scale for novelty. There's like P novelty, H novelty, and all this stuff. It's sort of a standard thing. H novelty stands for historical novelty. P novelty stands for psychological novelty. You can actually ask ChatGPT to come up with new types of novelties, how you could evaluate if an idea is novelty. One of the functions that it comes up with, I did it, is cosmic novelty, which means it's novel at a cosmic scale, right? It's not at a human scale. So it is called C novelty that invented. And now no human could possibly know what is at a cosmic level novelty, but you can ask ChatGPT to simulate an expert that would actually give a value to cosmic novelty, right? So if you ask him just simply, it's like, hey, can you implement cosmic novelty? ChatGPT says, no, it's impossible. But then if you say, let's simulate an expert that could do it, and then it happily does it, and it assigns numbers to stuff. And this is just one function. There are lots of functions. For example, I've built functions to figure out where something is, how near it is to the knowledge frontier, and how far it is away. The circle, assume it's 0, and minus is inside the circle, and plus is outside the circle. You can ask it, hey, this idea, where is it on the knowledge frontier on the scale? And you can actually do it in the reverse, which is actually really weird. You can say, I would like to have an idea which is plus 10 on the novelty scale or cosmic novelty. Give me examples. Or if you, let's say you invent like 6 different unimplementable functions, like all these different novelty evaluations things, you can ask it, give me an idea that scores high on all of these. It's the weirdest thing. It can do it. I don't know how. And you talk to it and it's repeatable. It does it exactly the same score every time. I don't know. So it's just sort of like this, okay, this is a whole frontier of things that, you know, you could maybe simulate the physicists or different theories, or invent a new types of scoring things for a new type of theory and say, hey, invent this thing. It's like a constraint solver. Now, I think physics, of course, is way more complicated than the problems that I'm working on, but it's interesting that ChatGPT can even do this. It's very, very bizarre, right? Very, very bizarre.
This is actually one of the idea we gave to the master students to do, is to like use, well, we will use Llama because it's open source, but to build something like that in context of physics. This is actually one of the things that we would like to see how it will tackle novel physics and novel mathematics. But I'm still thinking about this really. It comes to me for a long time. What is about this understanding that in a sense we have, that we in a sense understand stuff? Because, for example, when I'm thinking about like Gödel theorem, and which basically says that as long as you have natural numbers, then you can find out a theorem that is non-provable in your theory, and which in a sense means that this statement cannot be computed. But on the other hand, we as humans kind of have this understanding, or this meta level of understanding, that we can say this is right or wrong, and then we can, for example, then add this theorem to axiomatics of mathematics. This is one of the things. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of this, but you can actually develop different mathematics with different axioms. And one of the axioms that is very controversial is the so-called axiom of choice, which means that if you have like a, how is it called, a set, the axiom says that if you have a set, then you can pick a representative of that set, which sounds like an obvious thing, but in mathematics you have to assume that. And once you assume that, you have a lot of very bizarre theorems. For example, from one orange you can make 2 oranges, which is really bizarre thing. This is the Banach and somebody's decomposition. This is the name of the theorem. And I'm just wondering, how can we expect AI to get to that level, or we are not yet there in a sense?
So my experience is that in GPT-4 you can do crazy stuff that you would not imagine, like really push it far. You have to treat it like this alien, that you just have to ask extremely hard questions, and often the harder the question you ask, like even unknowns, you just don't know. Like you start off like, let's work on a crazy problem today, and you would be surprised how far it pushes it. Now, GPT-4 is the only system that behaves that way. And the challenge is to get it from where it is now, the average, to the knowledge sphere and beyond. So what I do is I create knowledge capsules in areas. Let's say I create a super condensed knowledge capsule about what innovation is, or some problem, let's say international politics or something. I create the super, you spend a little time crafting the super thing which is so dense that a human typically don't understand it. For example, I've created problems like engineering problems, like really lots of examples of crazy engineering problems, and then I load it in the AI as a knowledge capsule, and then I start my conversation. And some of the conversations have just totally blown my mind. I mean, I just really have to go ask it all the time, is this really true, what you're telling me, right? Like physics problems, like I was working on this problem for a friend, trying to heat water in 15 seconds, boil water in 15 seconds. Now, on a cooktop, takes about 15 kilowatts of electricity to do that. So it's a contact problem, right, from physics. How much can you be in contact with the water? And it came up with the craziest stuff, with microfluidics, with little lattices of little metal balls, with induction. And you wouldn't even know where to start. It just does it. It does the calculations, and you're arguing with it, is it possible to do it or not? And so some of these really exotic conversations have made me optimistic that, if you're heavy into solving problems in physics or mathematics or so on, you can probably find inspiration there. And definitely when GPT-5 comes out, that's for sure. You're spending all your time on that thing. It's just amazing. It's you just have to treat it as an alien, push it as hard as you can, and you would be surprised. I'm always surprised. I keep on inventing new things, discovering new things, and it's sort of like every day there's some new invention. You just have to be willingness to muck around with it. And so, as a physicist and something, it's like, it's a new world, man. I don't know what's going to happen, but it's going to be, for sure, it's going to be interesting, and your life is going to be more interesting. So I don't know how much have you played with ChatGPT-4 and try and push it to the limits? Because it's hard. It's really hard for it to operate beyond or at the knowledge layer or beyond, right?
I tried it with physics, and it often makes mistakes, but well, this is where I push it to the limit. With the other things, to be honest, not much. But this is only because in physics I have really a big expertise, so I really know what I'm asking for. But definitely, in the community of scientists, I can see that they doubt its usage. While I can see definitely that it's super useful tool. It's much better than Googling, and at least you could get a summary of certain ideas that were popped around and that kind of things. And one of the big advantages is that it writes equations, so it's super useful. But so far as an assistant, but for doing actual research, I tried with not much success, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that's a common thing. I've also done some work in areas that I don't know anything about and share it with experts in that area. For example, I have friends that are expert in high altitude balloons. So they ask me, okay, can you design a new high altitude balloon? And the system actually, I think, does a really good job of designing something. And then I show it to the expert, and the expert says, yeah, but all this is right, but this part over here is wrong. Hence, the whole thing is not valid, right? It's not, I should not be using AI. And I think, my God, do you realize that 6 months ago, we could not even have imagined having this conversation with the AI on high altitude balloons? Only humans could have done it. Now this thing is sort of 60% there. Just imagine if you prompt it correctly and maybe some new technologies, where we could be, right? So experts are sort of hampered by their ability just to imagine this technology being pushed in unimaginable directions, right?
Yeah.
Let me just add a little bit from the perspective of how to involve this AI in the more in-depth involvement. I came from the aviation industry, and there is the model of the design exists when you just have basic business requirements, and when you go down to the code. And it actually goes through very small steps when you just convert one notation of knowledge to another. with the very rigorously controlled amount of assumption on each step. And this is actually how regulation require people to think and develop complex technology. And I believe that ChatGPT at the moment is exactly the tool that's able to do this very small steps of converting one knowledge to another, instructing it from its prior like knowledge base, either in weights or in like some kind of vector database or something. So, but it's still capable of doing transition from one domain annotation to another domain, especially sometimes even by the language rules and natural language, like properties of how things actually connected. So, and it feels like it's able to be like perfect translator, either from like normal people language to lawyers language and back, and for instance, from like regular person to plumber language or something like that. So, and it feels like it still doesn't present any like observable, I mean, any interpreted chain of thought, but still it's just this translations. But at the same time, if you have person in the loop in each step, it might bring you tremendous value. But at the same time, it's not able to configure itself to solve complex problem with the reality in the loop. And that's why it's still there. Like the moment where it's able to adapt to solving problems, it's still not here, I believe.
So I have a different experience with pushing it to the knowledge frontier very quickly. It means that the step-by-step thing that you sort of lead it through to get it to where you really want to be, you can short circuit that. You can literally, I think what's happening with these new style of prompts that are super large and big, I mean, if you look at the IA prompts, you will see some of them are extremely large. For example, I have prompts that are 20 kilobytes in size, right? And what these prompts do, they seem to activate parts of ChatGPT and using the attentional model that normally, when you start off with just nothing, are not activated. You sort of have to remind the thing what it needs to know, and at that point, its ability to go deep immediately jumps. It sort of jumps to the knowledge frontier. So one thing that I've tried is, I forgot what it was. I created something like 100 or 200 examples of using totally exotic physical phenomena to heat water, like using a black hole to heat water, using gravitons, whatever crazy ideas the system came up with. Totally, most of it's total nonsense and hallucinations. I created a big file of that, and this is sort of now way beyond in the future and might even be impossible. And then I load that in Claude because it's easy to load these huge documents into it. And then suddenly it behaves very differently. It behaves near to the knowledge frontier or beyond, and it starts talking about stuff that you've never even imagined. And the conversation just changes, right? Even with really bizarre and odd things, right, that are not even true. It just seems to activate a lot of stuff in its brain. And that's actually one of the discoveries that I made, and also Larry, the prompt engineer I was talking about before, is if you remind it of all of these things, and it's possible to actually do it in a very compact way in a knowledge capsule, it behaves in very surprising ways that you would not suspect, right? It's sort of building the scaffold, and then means you don't need to go step at a time. And so I've used that with great success. For example, I've created personas that are absolutely world-class in international tax law that are very compact. but they can do stuff that an international tax lawyer can't. They come up with international taxes are a nightmare, right? There's about 6 million ways of doing stuff because you're talking to different countries. They all have different rules and so on. So there's just, in the world, there's actually no international tax law consultant because it's so complicated. Every situation is unique. But this prompt that sort of compresses a huge amount of tax law suddenly makes this thing behave like international tax law, where people that I know look at it and say, listen, I don't know if this, it sounds very interesting. It's using some really exotic way to move money from one country to another legally, but I don't know if it's possible. I need to go talk to an expert, right? And this is a tax expert, right? It's crazy, right? So I think once you know these tricks, it sort of opens up a whole new world, right? And part of the reason why I want to talk about this is to find more people that are doing this type of stuff, right? It's so exotic that how do you even find people that do this stuff, right? That we need to share the ideas how to think beyond the knowledge frontier, right? What can we do? What are people doing?
Sorry for laughing, but I'm just pushing ChatGPT to the limit, and it's so funny.
It can make craziest mistakes, right? I think hallucination is both its fatal weakness and it's also amazing strength, right? It can come up with the craziest stuff. So
it's
Sorry, Hannah, it's so amazing how you're pushing it to the limits. I never thought of pushing it this way. I don't know how many people have ever tried what you're doing. Like,
there are a bunch of really crazy ones. Larry is the one that, but Larry is comes from an educational background, right? And so he tries to push it towards the past, right? We teach the past, right? I'm trying to push it beyond the knowledge frontier. It's like, hey, the future innovators, this is where all the cool ideas are. But, you know, like CB is trying to push it in a different way. You know, CB, you maybe can talk about how you're trying to push stuff, but supply chain, right? Another guy's pushing it in taxes, another guy's pushing it in physics, right? So it's interesting. But until you talk with people that have a perspective, you know, you don't realize that, oh, okay, there's this tax guy who's doing amazing stuff, and he is even surprised that he's doing all this stuff, right? So I don't know, CB, you've also, you know, probably come to the same conclusion. CB is a great prompt designer too, so hacking stuff together in supply chain and stuff, right? So
yeah, so I've got a background in talent management, and I manage a consulting team within supply chain sustainability, and I mean, I'm just building on the shoulders of giants here. So literally most of my work is let me take IA, let me take, you know, one of Ways persona prompts, and then just create one that, like this week, for example, the top use case for us is we've got an entire team that just does translations, you know, we get supplier declarations and we need to be able to translate it and load it into the system. And it was fascinating. We took one of, you know, Hannah's and persona prompts, and we just created one. And what I've noticed is the more specific the task, the better to build out a, you know, the more nuanced the persona. It just, you're able to get deeper. Versus if you've got a very specific task and you're keeping your prompts quite general, quite broad. So like very specifically, you know, you could just say, hey, act as a world-class translator. And it does a decent job. I've got an entire team that's QAing the outputs. Or you could specifically say, hey, you're an expert in translating, you know, Japanese, and like build it out with all the, you know, the frameworks and the, you know, and the specificity, and you're just getting a better output, right? So it's also knowing, I think, how detailed you want to go with the prompts. But I am seeing that. So here's what I've noticed. Here's from a talent management standpoint. What's blowing my mind is I'm not seeing the adoption that I thought I would see within my teams, right? Because I think a lot of them, it's, you know, they tried once or twice, you know, and they're not getting what they want. And then they just kind of say, let me just go back. So I'm spending a lot of time trying to think about how do I incentivize my folks to continue using it and continue experimenting, because this now puts innovation in the hands of, you know, the individual, not the company, right? So that's been top of mind for me.
Yeah, it's a problem that I also face a lot, and it's partly why I'm doing this, is that, hey, you can lead this horse to water, but forcing it to drink is a different thing, right? It's sort of like I talk to entrepreneurs and I say, listen, dudes, you would be silly not to use this stuff. Why not use all these prompts and stuff? These things turn you into a super innovator, super entrepreneur. You can solve any problem where you want. And you should just spend some time learning and playing with it. You know, spend half an hour, read a few case studies, and you would be blown away. And it's hard to convince people to do this stuff, right? It's incredibly hard, right? And then there are the few geniuses that just run with it and invent the craziest stuff.
That's what I'm seeing. Like I am seeing, what I'm seeing is a talent divide where there are folks that they're AI first and they're running everything they do through these things and they're building their skill sets. And there is a massive productivity amplification that's happening there, where they're just seeing it as just another tool, just like spreadsheets, just like internet, just like a PC. They're seeing these LLMs as just a basic work tool, and they're augmenting themselves quite significantly. And then there are folks who are not. And I think we will start to see this sort of this divide and the gap getting larger and larger. And again, from a talent management standpoint, like I'm spending a lot of time thinking about how do we bring everybody along, you know, because there is quite a divide now.
I mean, one thought I have with you're saying this problem, like, so I've used it like this naive way, like you described, like pretend that you're an expert in blah, 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 pretend you're like David Ogilvy, pretend you're, you know, Elon Musk, say something, right? So, and you get a result, you know, but what you're describing is a lot more labor intensive, right? You're saying you have to create these very detailed knowledge capsules and agents, which I haven't tried, honestly. So I would think that would be a barrier for people, right? Because, you know, people are naturally lazy, right? They want to do as little as possible. So if you have to do all this, I think that's not known, right? If you really write all this out, like you're advocating, and you're getting that kind of amazing results, then maybe people don't know that, or they don't want to put in the effort.
And then it's scaling that, right? So what we're doing internally is because it takes time. Building effective, really good prompts, like the work that Hannes has done, takes time. Now, what you can do is, again, like you're building on top of giants here, right? So you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You take one of Hannes' frameworks and you say, build the same damn thing, but for whatever problem that I'm trying to do. Use the same, you know, format, and then it gives you, you're not starting from square one. You're starting from a really good place. And then the important piece here is, to your point, Vidal, it's scaling it. So now we've got, whether it's a Jira page or Google Doc, whatever your central repository is, hey, we've got people that have spent a lot of time building out really good prompts for translations or whatever the use case is. Now everybody, you know how to control C and V, run with it, right? Like don't try to reinvent the wheel. Like, start with this and then let's try to build on top. You got something better, now let's replace that with the better one. And it's just kind of, that's how I'm thinking about scaling it.
I think, CP, this is exactly the right question, how to encourage people to use this. And I think that this comes from the ability of the person's ability to ask questions, and sometimes questions for themselves. And I believe this is skill people missing in order to not starting improving themselves over their like prior AI resources or with AI. But if you just start asking questions, and I think this is just generic skill we need to turn on in everyone in order to boost this productivity. Just what I want, like what I actually want. So, and this is probably the first question that people need to ask, and then it will collapse to more questions and in more details. And I believe that a lot of people just don't use this to asking questions.
100%. I agree. Yeah. Like this is really it's a skills question, right? Like I think there is a mindset shift that needs to happen here. Like the way we think and ideate and solve problems needs to fundamentally change. Because you're right, Yvonne, like it's like what we think is the next best question, right? Based on our experience and our expertise is more often than not the right question, right? We need to be able to zoom out. And the way I phrase it is putting our egos aside and going into this with every time I start a new chat, it's what do I not know? I'm not going to assume that I know anything. Let me just go in with what is the ultimate outcome that I need to have? Not what I think should be the next step. What is the outcome? So it forces everybody to be, I think, like outcomes focused and impact first. And it is hard. Like a lot of people, like we're not wired that way. It's difficult for me. Like we're right. Like it's a mindset shift for sure.
Yeah, that one of the mindset shifts is traditionally humans had the ideas, right? And so it's sort of hard to come up with ideas. So a lot of people say, listen, I'm not that type of person that come up with ideas, right? And then there are other people that are tortured by the fact, oh, I have to come up with some idea to solve this problem. What is the answer? And in this new world, it's like, it doesn't matter. You can be totally have no ideas or be tortured by creating ideas. Just start with a blank slate. There's a machine now that helps you create ideas. So basically ideas become free, right? You can just generate more when you need them. The only thing that doesn't change is execution, right? What do you do with 1,000 ideas? You have to pick one and do it. Right?
Yeah.
So,
and even execution, right? What's really cool in this new AI world is that becomes so much easier too, right? I read a fascinating article the other day that said Forbes is going to have a hell of a time putting together their top richest people in 2050, because what AI is going to do is, number one, it's going to mint an order of magnitude more billionaires in the next decade than ever before. And two, we're not going to know any of their names. Right? So folks like a Sean and an Adi and a Briscoe and the folks that are in this room, right, that are enterprising and resourceful and curious and they can now build and scale on way little capital, way little time than ever before because of the leverage that AI provides. So it's going to be, I mean, it's going to be an incredible world.
one of the interesting topics that I thought was, I've noticed talking to people, a lot of people that are autistic or on the spectrum somehow, they really go deep into AI, right, and generative AI, because I guess it's easier to talk to them, right? So in general, people that are challenged with this don't directly speak with other people. They speak through the internet, chat rooms and whatever, right? So that's interesting that more and more people are admitting it's like, listen, I'm somewhere in the spectrum or something or other, but AI is my new buddy, right? And so it might actually give a huge advantage to those people, right?
Hey, Sibi, I had a point if you guys don't mind if I jump in here.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so regarding Sibi's goal to like kind of bring AI to more people, and I think you guys already talked about how important asking the right questions is. And this is something I've been thinking about a lot, and I've come to the realization that asking the right questions is really just the result of two things, right? One is having a clear desire, like a really, really specific understanding of what it is that you hope to achieve, like what your objective is. And then the second part is communication. This is the fundamental problem for humans, and it's the fundamental problem in hiring as well, is like, how do you get your ideas and put it into language? Because now this is like English language is the way that we're interacting with technology now, right? So that I feel like having a clear desire, these are problems that come from, these are like psychological and and very human issues. So like no matter how much we want to like push the idea barrier, like nothing is possible unless we want something. Like we can't like manufacture a desire that doesn't come from a very like human and animalistic place. I feel like that's the only way to be motivated enough to actually take something from an idea into execution. It's interesting, this whole intersection of like humans and technology. I'm not really sure. I don't have the answers yet. I just have a lot of questions.
Yeah, it's a great point, Sean. Like and you're right, like it's different for everybody. Like when I ask my team, like, what is it gonna take for you to use this thing? The answers vary from tell me when you're about to replace me, and then maybe I'll think about it. Right? Like they have no interest in touching this. They're just like, until my job is actually gonna go today, don't tell me about this thing. I don't give a shit. To all the way to like, I mean, they don't even, I barely even say chat, and they're just like on it, they're just so excited to use it. And they're like, how do I automate every single thing I do? And they're coming. So it's just like, it's such a wide range. And you're right, Sean, like everybody's motivated by different things.
Yeah, that was my first take too. Once I learned the power of it, I look back at things that I do 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and think, wow, I'll never do those things again because I could automate it so much faster and better. Now I could do more things. I think Vidal brought up the laziness conundrum, and I'm lazy too. I mean, lazy people figure out the easiest way to do things. So this is now the easiest way to do things. So of course, motivated lazy people figure out the best and easy way to do things. I'm in the motivated lazy crowd, and I'm like taking off like a rocket because, wow, look at all these things I can now do that are lower effort and actually have a pretty decent result.
Maybe Briscoe, you want to tell people what you're doing?
Yeah. What are the lazy people up to today?
Yeah,
well,
right.
Every time we have one of these meetups and people start introducing these new ideas, I think, oh my God, I got to write these down. Now I've got 10 more new ideas than I had last time. But now what I'm doing ghostwriting. I've created a ghostwriter that can identify and understand your writing style. One thing that's great about chat, it's a great writer. The bad thing is everybody with instant access to it can write roughly the same thing. So everybody, you have a million people that write sort of the same style, and that's going to be problematic. I call it the wallpaper syndrome. Like everything's going to turn into wallpaper. So to kind of combat that and to help people, amplify their innate abilities, I came up with Ghostwriter, which identifies and understands your unique writing style based on a 10-point scale, identifying 10 different attributes of writing styles, and then writes in that style. So I could write, what I worked on is I wrote a short story, 40-page short story, which pushes the limits of chat because it forgets, as you know, after like maybe 4 pages, it forgets what it's doing and it starts to do something else. So learned how to reprompt it, how to summarize the story and succinctly so that it could stay on task, and successfully wrote a couple of short stories now that are around the 40-page range. And I've also helped my dad capture his memories. He's older, and helped him pretty easily capture his memoirs for life, which would be forgotten completely. And this is something that's very easy to do, and it helps people, give them a voice quite quickly. I wrote 17,000 words. Well, we wrote, Ghost and I wrote together 17,000 words in a day, which is extremely prolific for an author, which tends to average, even the most prolific authors are about 3,000 to 4,000 words a day. So 17,000 words of a rough draft is incredible.
So actually, Briscoe and I did an interesting experiment, which sort of it's one of the weirder experiments. So I have a new way to create personas, which is based on something called AI speak, which is based on how AIs talk to each other, right? Imagine two AIs can talk to each other, what would they say? So you can use AI speak as a function to create personas beyond the knowledge frontier that has crazy stuff. And so I created this persona that called Maya, which actually named after my cat, that focuses on innovation and solving world problems using the Pareto frontier, so something from economics, and actually a whole bunch of other frontiers that have been identified, like game theory and all sorts of stuff. There's a certain number of frontiers in addition to the knowledge frontier. So anyway, I created this fake entity called Maya, and then I had Maya work on world problems and try and solve them, right? And came up with lots of interesting things, which I then gave to Briscoe. And Briscoe took that transcript and turned it into, essentially, took it and turned it into like a white paper, essentially. And you read the white paper, it's, God knows if it's true or not. It's got simulations of how the world will change. It literally has little graphs and charts that it worked out. It built a model how to simulate the world it invented formulas, just to simulate the future with experts and so on. It's totally nutty and crazy, right? But, we can, right? We can do this stuff. And the white paper is amazing. And I don't know, Briscoe told me if you had a company do that white paper, it probably cost you $6,000 to $8,000 to do it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, the efficiency of writing and a little bit of research is ridiculous. I think even Nick brought that up, how he shortcuts writing legal documents that lawyers would charge who knows, ridiculous amounts for, and now quickly and easily accessible.
Yeah, for example, the tax stuff, the tax work international tax work that I did with a tax guy, he sometimes shows up. I won't reveal him, but he says, if he had a company do it for him, it would be a $10,000 job, and if they had to give an opinion on it, it would be $20,000. And I'm creating stuff at that level in 15 minutes flat, right? So it's crazy. It's totally crazy.
What is this like AI speak that you're talking about that you write these things in? What is that?
So you should try it. It's actually very simple to get started. I have more advanced stuff. So typically, let me give you a little secret. If you have the stamina to get to this point of our conversations, you are a good chance for this internal group, the beyond group that goes beyond the knowledge frontier. I have a workshop on that where I teach tricks and stuff that I've learned and what other people have stuff. So anyway, so you would be a candidate for beyond. But one of the things that I'm discovered is if you simply ask ChatGPT to say, using AI speak, and put in brackets, how AIs talk to each other, how would you summarize what a recruiter does? And then it turns into this different mode where it compresses the knowledge of a recruiter into like one paragraph of text, right? There are more I've written. There's actually a follow-up of AI speak called I speak, which is even intelligent speak, which is even a more compressed thing. So you can create knowledge capsules of this. So you can, you compress this stuff. Most of the time you can sort of figure out, but it's also just in this weird alien language, right? You can read it, but you don't really understand it, why it's important or something. But now you take this AI speak version of the recruiter or whatever you want, or tax lawyer, and you can crunch huge amounts of knowledge into this really small compact thing. You load that up as a prompt, right? And that's how I created Maya using AI speak. And And then it starts behaving completely different. It's sort of like you can invent anything you want. You just need to know there's a small trick that everyone can do if you know how to do it. And then you're doing crazy stuff that nobody else has done. And it's just totally unique. And so the interesting bit is there are probably hundreds of, I don't know, maybe dozens, I don't know, people in the world that are doing this type of crazy stuff. How do you even find them, right? So,
that's something
This
I've
is
been
mind
wondering.
blowing. This is totally mind blowing.
I wonder,
Hannes,
like,
can you share the white paper with the group and get their opinion on it?
yeah,
It's pretty. I thought Maya came up with like one thing that I thought was interesting, that out of all the world's problems, the economic disparity was the most severe, would become the most severe in the next few years. Climate change was going to be slightly better. I forgot what the other one, mental health and well-being, was slightly better, but the difference between the poor, the very poor, and the very, very rich was going to grow.
Yeah, so Maya was an interesting experiment built on AI Speak. The most recent experiment is even weirder. So that quote that I gave at the end of the talk about the imprints that you leave and people that are moving with you, this was actually generated through a very involved process as a prompt to motivate professionals to share more ideas. And it's based on the concept of quantum nudges. So in quantum theory, of course, there's this notion of a really small step, right? So imagine that you can craft a statement that could influence humanity. It's like a tweet or something or other that goes viral. It's this smallest possible thing you can do that would nudge humanity in a particular direction. So I used some of these artificial intelligences to develop a theory of quantum nudges. I know it sounds super woo-woo, but it's actually really practical. And it came up with dozens of quantum nudges and figured out how they could influence the future, because it developed like 5 scenarios for the future and how you would accelerate them and deaccelerate them, for example, isolationist scenario and so on. So this entity is working on this, and it's coming up with these quantum nudges to influence humanity. I mean, in the past, a researcher could probably spend years just trying to figure this stuff out, and I do it in the afternoon while I'm drinking my coffee, so because I can, right? It's just weird, right? So you can literally work on anything you want. Yeah.
I have a question. Are you guys familiar with any groups working on like the protocols between AIs? And like, I'm wondering, eventually there'll have to be a protocol for how AIs communicate with each other, and also like maybe like payment protocols and stuff for agents purchasing things and whatnot. I'm wondering like what kind of
Feels
thing.
like it's the Wild West.
Yeah, there is a group actually that's using crypto where the AI would buy stuff for you, like plane tickets and stuff like this. It scared the hell out of me, but there are some. I went to a meetup with one of them, but I took so AI Speak at its most basic. It's very easy to do, and you can just start it yourself. It basically gave you all the instructions. But I spent maybe half a day doing a more advanced version that tries to compress whole conversations and whole white papers into this highly compressed format. And it's crazy. I mean, it would take you years to develop this encoding. And it just comes up with it, and it can actually understand it. So the funny thing is that I Speak is self-contained, so I can go to any other AI and just drop it in there, and it understands it immediately, what it is. There's no instructions how to use it or how to create it. It just does it.
Very cool.
That's wild. That's totally wild.
Can I show you guys what I'm working on real quick?
Sure, go ahead.
This is what I'm working on. It's called Able. So it all started we did like a a camp for kids to teach them AI. And I was like, oh, I'm just gonna make a talking bot. And then I became obsessed with it for several months. And so now you can, you know, like you click on it, hey Abel, what's up? Say hi. And it
Hello there, wonderful friend. I'm just here, frolicking and prancing around in a field of joy, casting magical dust into the air as I dream about my next rainbow encounter. How delightful it is to talk with you.
yeah, so it turns into a rainbow if you give it 2 weird prompts, which I did, or it turns into like a unicorn or something. But what's cool about this that I think is like you can work with all these different prompts, and then also you can like change the languages and stuff, and it speaks multiple languages. Hello, how's it going?
I'm sorry, I don't quite understand your query. Are you asking about observing wildlife or something else? As a wild
Anyway, so the other cool thing is like you're talking about all these different prompts. You can create your own prompt. It's GPT-4, right? And so you could just go here and say like you are something or whatever. It's a system prompt. And another cool thing that I'm kind of proud of is you can like share the prompts as well. So like here's some prompts that were shared with me or whatever. So if you like copy this and give it to somebody, then you can say, hey, what's up?
just hanging in the digital cloud, my friend.
And then
How's your world spinning?
and they'll have the prompt there as well, so they can load it or whatever. So that's where it's at right now. It's kind of been a really fun project.
Very cool, Keith. What did you build that on? Did you build that on a platform like a low code platform or anything like that?
It's React.
Sounds like a pretty cool endeavor you've got going on there.
So yeah, it's React and yeah, just React and ChatGPT on the background, and using Google text to speech to stream the responses. But there's another one that I want to implement, which like that's really popular, that's a lot faster, called 11 Labs. But I like that it had
So definitely use 11 Labs, at least for TTS.
Yeah, because you could
Much
stream
better voices.
Yeah.
By the way, I know the founders. I'm basically neighbors.
I also played with 11 Labs, pretty cool. So we want credits now.
yeah, 11 Labs is cool. So yeah, and they have
By the way, so sorry to interrupt you, but I got an I'm sorry, I for a half an hour I was pushing the knowledge, but concerning this, what you have said, that you put this UI with React or something, do you know some AI tool to do it seamlessly? Because for example, for me, I am definitely a backend guy. I think about business logics. I think about delivering from here to here. But for example, like doing a nice web page, okay, I can try. I can click stuff.
You mean AI that does user experience?
Yeah, and this
automatically text to design.
Yeah,
cool open source projects that like it depends on what your goal is, but like there's an open source project called Vocode that out of the box they set you up with some like a talking AI, and then another one is Realchar. That's another one that's getting pretty popular. So
can you
that
put them on chat?
Yeah, sure.
Because this is something that I really have no idea how to do this kind of things. All right.
Yeah, those are two really popular ones right now. They're pretty cool. You know, they're a little different than Able. Like I didn't know about those when I started Able. Otherwise, I would have made a lot more progress really fast. So those kind of give you some out of the box like things that are pretty cool if you want to talk vocally to your AI.
And Briscoe, you're also using tools, right? You found something.
Yeah, I forgot what I was looking for it just now. It's hard to commit all of these names to memory, so I've got it written down somewhere. But if I find it, I'll drop it in the chat. But what I'm building mine on
Names of the
is
AI companies are very similar.
yeah, I'm building my app on just Webflow, which is a really good like front end tool, and then Make is the kind of powers the back end, and I might integrate with Airtable because Webflow doesn't have enough of a database. Doesn't satisfy the database needs, but it does the needs pretty easily. One really good thing about Webflow is there's tons of templates that you can just grab. You find something similar to what you're building, you grab that template, and it's usually free, or you can grab free components that people have already built.
Hey, we also have a bunch of lurkers, so we want to get to know you. Nitin, what are you up to? You want to talk a little bit? Just you can also opt out, so if you want to. Or Chris, you want to say something? We also have Mengdi and Tingyuk Wang. So happy to take cede the floor to you guys if you want to say something. Anyone?
We have a comment in the chat. What is the prompt again for generating AI speak or I speak?
Yeah, I'm really curious.
It's basically just using AI speak, parenthesis, how AIs talk to each other, and then ask whatever you want. So
how AIs talk. Okay.
Yeah, it's a little trick. You can try different variants and so on. So there are a huge number of weird things you can do with Chat GPT that I've discovered, other people have discovered, that are just mind-blogging, and the list is just too long to actually, because it's so exotic situations, and everyone has different interests, right? So way Larry pushes it towards education, I try to push it to innovation, right? They're trying to come up with new ideas and so on. So one of them is also, it's a much more sophisticated set of prompts that was actually, I do a lot of meta prompting, so prompts that are designed by AIs, because I cannot speak properly to an AI. You need to convince an AI to tell you how to speak to itself. That's sort of the leap that you need to make. So you start with something very simple and then use meta prompting to develop a more sophisticated prompt and force it to speak in the way that an AI likes to talk to it. And I often use alpha prompt for that. So I actually use prompts to do prompt engineering. Alpha prompt is a really good one. So you can design a prompt, and it's a very slow process, but it normally comes up with really crazy prompts. So I don't know, not a lot of people are doing that. I know Briscoe has done that. He's doing a lot of prompt engineering. I don't know, using other prompts, but basically you start with a prompt that are sort of suitable, adjusted to create new prompts and so on. So,
yeah, I use the alpha prompt for that, and it's really, really good at it, at helping you craft more succinct prompts.
What's the URL for this alpha prompt? What is this?
So the trick is to go to the Innovation Algebra homepage where you have this huge list.
I'm gonna go check it out.
Start digging into the toolbox, right? There's some really weird tools there. And there are, if you follow the links, you'll get to case studies, and then you get even to weirder areas. And if you like to read, there are lots of really little gems hidden there in these case studies, how to do stuff, like special tricks you can use and so on. I just don't have the resources to tell everyone, and you have to go read a lot. But once you start going in there, you'll discover how to invent new things. Like I've invented several toys. I've invented several social things to create more social cohesion that are actually not jokes, right? It's a serious thing that could be a business, it could be a real product, and that I've spoken to other people and that they're actually excited about doing something, right? It's sort of once you start creating ideas, you create lots of really good ideas very fast, and you have a wealth of them. And now your next problem is, who can you give it to actually do something with it? Because, you know, you need to prioritize it on something, right? So, so I often use tricks like taking a psychologist's perspective. So I create a psychologist persona and say, hey, are there particular psychological phenomena that a psychologist would be able to use to influence human behavior or to develop products? And so, and also using techniques like the 7 sins. How can you use that to create products that are sticky? I mean, a lot of this stuff is you need to motivate people to do something. Like, okay, here's 200 ideas. You need to motivate somebody to actually, you have to nudge them in the right direction. Say, please take one of these ideas. You know, here's 100 ideas to improve water quality in Africa. Somebody needs to do it, right? So, so a lot of it becomes just how do you use psychological principles to influence people to actually start changing the world. The type of thing that Adi is doing is like, he's planting the seed in people's head that you can use AI to solve your problems and overcome whatever constraints you have. And if you teach this, and it's a relatively easy thing to teach, right? You need to just to show people how to use AI, and then it spreads, right? Then suddenly you have a lot of people doing it. And now you have innovators all over the world, right? People that would not traditionally have been innovating are suddenly innovating, right? Because they don't need to come up with ideas. Ideas are free, right? People are throwing ideas at you, right? And if you don't have ones you like, you just generate new ones. So this is a new world, right? When I often speak to entrepreneurs, they say, I want to be secretive with and then they ask me, Hannes, why do you even share all these prompts, right? And why do you do this? You know, that you could make a lot of money out of these prompts. It's like, listen, you know, if I can convince people to make a lot of money out of it, that's really hard, right? You need to convince them. You have to absolutely say, here is the prompt that's going to change your world. Please use it. It's still hard, right? It's just a embarrassment of riches that you can just give all the stuff away. And you can always invent something more that's more valuable, whatever your interests are. It's a total bizarre situation that we are in.
Selling is really hard.
Pardon?
I mean, selling stuff is really hard.
Right.
Yeah.
Without distribution. So an idea is worthless without distribution. You have to get the idea. You have to nudge people. You have to tell other people. You have to hope some other people will take it. You need to build a community around it. As a solo, that's really, really hard, right? You can have the best ideas, but they all just die because there's nobody paying attention. Part of this,
absolutely right. Absolutely right.
Yeah. So okay. So good. You created them. I've spoken to many entrepreneurs. Amazing app, amazing use of technology. They just have no way to get it in the market, right? They don't have the background, the skills, whatever, the distribution, the community to do it. And that's the interesting thing is about communities like IA can provide a forum for people to bring their ideas to other people, right? And the coolest thing is I've met so many cool people through this community, right? That are helping me in all sorts of weird ways, right? Things that I've never would have expected. So that's why I say it's important to figure out this path that we together go through and help each other, right? We need, this is a totally new situation. You don't need to be secretive. You will need other people to go through this path. We actually don't know where it's going to lead up, where it's going to end up. And keeping stuff to yourself is just futile because there's going to be 200 kids in a small village in India generating ideas next, and they're going to be competing with you, right? So it's crazy, right? It's anyway. I'm talking like I'm a nutty person here now. So, but anyway, it is just I'm just totally blown away. So,
Sorry,
You
guys.
blow me
I
away.
have
You
to
blow me
actually
away.
go to develop my own idea. So yeah, it's 9 p.m. here. I don't know what is your time zone now. So
let's just see how long we've been talking. If it's a new record or
3
not.
hours.
3 hours.
Yeah.
It's been worse. With 4 hours is the maximum, but you know, I would just say if somebody wants to say something at this point, it's good time. But otherwise, we probably should just call it a day. And I hope to see you again on one of our meetups. I know your faces now. Please reach out to me. If you need help with something, if you need some way to whisper to an AI, some special stuff, either me or somebody else will know how to do it. So, you know. And thank you for staying so long. I really appreciate it. So
No, thank
anyway,
you, Hannes. I always have I always learn new stuff every time I'm here. So thank you for organizing this community and getting everybody together. This is a lot of fun.
Hey, and CB, we really appreciate you, all the stuff you've done for us. So that's amazing, right? So,
But this is actually one of the hardest things, to get people together so that they want to come.
That's true.
Because, for example, I remember a lot of like this type of communities and stuff that I was supposed to attend, but I thought, no, I don't like this. I'm lazy. Everybody's lazy nowadays, right?
Right.
What I found is the in-person meetups are often get kind of muddled with investors and like, you know, pitches and stuff, and it's less of an exchange of ideas. So it was really a pleasure to listen in and also have a chance to contribute a little bit to the discussion. I look forward to participating more.
Yeah. So one thing I want to ask, if you know people, so all of us have people in our environment that we really love talking to. They're probably very much like you guys, right? They're your soulmates. Please invite them. We want more interesting people, right? Think about who to invite, right? This is where you're going to find your next coworker, friend, innovator, buddy, co-founder, whatever, right? By building a community and finding people that think like you, because it's so hard. We are all so specialized. I mean, I wouldn't have found Sibi or Larry, all of these guys if I wasn't sharing what I'm doing, right? So by sharing, you find more people like you, and they somewhere in the world, you know, they're there. You just don't know how to find them, right? So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Another thing you mentioned earlier is like, you know, we're pretty much all unrecognizable in terms of our thought patterns from like 6 to 12 months ago. So I mean, I'm just really excited to see where things are going to go, like not just with the technology, but just with our thought. It's really nice to be in a place, you know, where we can have a free exchange of ideas. So what I'll definitely do, do you have a solid presence on LinkedIn?
No, I'm not.
So
most of the people come through Cerebral Valley and so on. I have a little bit of Twitter activity and a little bit of LinkedIn activity, but a lot of it is just word of mouth. So
maybe
any
that's
help on the socials would be fantastic, right?
Yeah, that's one place where I can add value because I have a really big community of people, like younger people my age, around like 21 to 28 years old, that are passionate about the AI space, especially in the Bay Area. And I think that's pretty much exactly who I would be going after if I was you. So I already sent you a connection request, but I'm gonna take a look at your LinkedIn page, and if there's any way I can add value, maybe I'll shoot you a message.
I totally appreciate it, Sean. That's great. So
Of course.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much,
Okay,
guys.
guys. 3 hours. Good meeting. I really enjoyed it. I hope you had a good time. Tell other people like you, and you know, we'll see each other soon on the next meetup. Thank you very much for staying so long. I know it's you know, I really appreciate you taking the time. It's really cool. I always meet more interesting people. Fantastic. I'm just having best time of my life too, and I hope you too. So anyways, that's it for today. Thank you so much. I will share the video online so you can watch it again. So anyway, that's it. Thank you guys.
Hey,
Thank you.
thanks,
Thank
Hannes.
you.
Have a
Thank
nice
you.
day.
Awesome.
Okay, bye.
Really awesome.